Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, March 21st, 2022. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Here.
Miss Hersey, Miss Colasetti,
Here.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Chair Evans,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, now for the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting or a previous meeting for March 7th, 2022. Are there any substantial changes to the minutes? Grace?
There was a change, but I don't know if you want a motion first.
A motion for the approval of the meetings or a motion for the change?
A motion for approval and then discussion for a change.
All right, does somebody want to give me a motion for approval?
I would move to approve the minutes from March 6th or March 7th, 2022.
I'll second.
Mary Alice seconds. Okay, Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight a small change, just getting my vote accurately reflected that was sent out today was just a small change. If that's what we're voting on, that was sent out earlier today.
Yeah, I think the clerk reflected that in the current minutes we're voting on. Is that right?
That is correct. That was submitted to the council this morning with that change notated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and call the roll for the vote.
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to public input and presentations. And the first part of public input will be about the ARPA funding priorities for the next 30 minutes. Tonight, we are prioritizing, with council approval, the first 30 minutes of public input specifically for receiving public comments concerning allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act recovery funds. We will take input at this city council meeting of committee of the whole today, March 21st, and then March 28th and April 4th. There will be an in-person listening session in city council chambers on Tuesday, April 5th from 5:30 to 7:30. We also encourage the community to provide opinions via a survey at ccrpc.org/Urbana-ARPA. And Breema, if you could put maybe the APR slide up, that would be helpful. Or Lucas, if you could do that. Thank you. The City Council has identified 5 priority areas for potential use of ARPA recovery funds. These include sustainable infrastructure, human rights and social services, public health and safety, adequate and affordable housing, and economic recovery and economic development. Please consider the following questions. What are the outcomes that you would like to see from use of ARPA recovery funds? Do you have specific ideas for funding projects or programs related to the 5 priority areas? All comments are welcome. Please note, if you wish to speak on use of the ARPA funds as well as other topics, you may speak on the other topics during regular public input to follow the next 30 minutes. So I need to ask for a motion and a second to prioritize the first 30 minutes of public input tonight for comments related to allocation of ARPA recovery funds.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, so that opens it up to the public. If you would like to talk about ARPA funds, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised yet. Again, we're taking public input for the ARPA funds. If you have some ideas about this, go ahead and raise your hand. We're taking them now. Okay, still not seeing any hands raised for the ARPA fund discussion. Anybody have ideas how long we want to wait for this, or do we want to go on to regular public input?
I would say that we would go on with regular public input.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Okay. All right, so does anybody want to talk to us about anything? And you can still talk about ARPA funds, of course, but we will open the comments to anything. Does anybody want to talk about anything? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Got a
Yes,
few
you have. you have
Yeah,
three
you've got a
people.
couple. There are
Okay,
three.
I'm not seeing it on my thing.
You got to click on the attendees list.
Oh, thank you. All right. Whoops, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, Dennis Roberts, please go ahead.
Well, I'd like to say hello to the city council members. I'm here representing some thoughts that come from the Urbana Sister City Committee. And I would like to read a statement. The Sister Cities movement was conceived by President Dwight D. Eisenhower at the end of World War II as a means of building bridges of trust and cooperation between nations following the chaos of war. Eisenhower, himself a war hero, believed that through citizen diplomacy created through people-to-people connections, communities could succeed where international diplomacy had failed. The Sister Cities International Program was established in 1956 to promote peace through the mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation, one individual, one community at a time. In the 66 years since its founding, the Sister Cities program has grown to include about 500 member organizations, maintaining up to 2,000 city-to-city global partnerships in 140 countries. During previous eras of conflict, the Sister Cities have played an important role in maintaining bridges of friendship between communities and countries. The Urbana Sister City Committee, established by the City Council and chartered by Sister Cities International in 2008, maintains three global partnerships: Zombo, Malawi, Haiju District in the city of Guangzhou, China, and Thionville, France. In light of current tensions escalating in the world, the Urbana Sister Cities Committee has come forward this evening to reaffirm our support for the core beliefs of the Sister City program to promote peace, mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation through the people-to-people friendships that we have established across the globe. Furthermore, we support the call made by Sister Cities International to all its members, asking them to keep their sister city relationship active, especially now when the political issues and actions of the day threaten to disrupt the positive, constructive relationships that have been made over many years. And to, quote, applaud those sister city programs and citizens around the globe, including in Russia, who have voiced their support for the independent Ukraine and reaffirmed their belief in peace through mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation. Our Sister City Committee felt that because of the current conditions outlined in the document concerning the Ukraine, it was important to reiterate these qualities and to quote from the Sister Cities International press release. The Illinois Sister City Association, of which we are a member, is also considering making a statement. However, they have very many different sister cities throughout the world, and some of them in Ukraine, some of them in Russia, and are considering the best way to approach individually through different city councils this topic. But our Sister City program has always stood for the importance of communication, of friendship, and cooperation. For more information about the Urbana Sister Cities program, you can go to the city's website and search for urbanaillinois.us/Urbana Sister Cities. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, next up is Brandy McCoy.
Hello. So first I want to say I appreciate the continuation of conversation around around council goals. I get it's dragging on, but clarity is really important for implementation strategies and also for measuring the success of them. So I want to thank council members who have continuously pushed for deeper clarity on those. And I'd also like to thank Councilmember Wu for being the sole responder to my questions regarding conflicting police policies. It was uplifting to receive acknowledgement, and it restored some faith for me that coming here every week is worth the effort. So with that, I've still not been able to find any clarity on the draft evaluation by CPRB that has been implemented by UPD. On the city website, the draft contains, in parentheses, pending council approval. So, I mean, did this come to council? Was it approved? I don't understand why something would go unaddressed by the council for 2 years and be implemented without approval. So it's just a procedural question. I'm not asking about why the change was requested by CPRB, nor am I refuting that process or, saying that the council should vote no on the draft. I'm just asking about city procedures and process, and I would greatly appreciate transparency on that front. The link on the CPRB page that says to get more information about this review process, click here, is not a good link. And I even tried, it looks like it's backwards, and I even tried copying it in the right order. I even tried making an edit because there's 2 N's in the word information. So I was like, maybe that's it. So I took out an N and it still didn't work. So if the information is there, if we could fix that link, that'd be rad. I also think that it does seem important to update the code, the city code around CPRB to reflect what is current reality. So I'm just, for transparency's sake, I'm asking for the public to be informed on where the information can be found and for the information to become accessible if it is kind of hiding behind that link. Okay, a little short on time. I also want to comment on the presentations we saw last week about grocery store sustainability. I would be really, really proud if Urbana took the lead, like the presenters suggested. Food sharing seems like common sense. There's kind of a myth that floats around that it's illegal for grocery stores to do that, and it's not. So, food going to waste when so many families are food insecure is just, if we can do anything to fix that, we should. And in terms of the plastic bags, we see them all over town. When I moved into the house that we bought here, there was one in the neighbor's tree way up top. and it stayed there for more than a year because it was too high for anyone with an interest to remove it to reach. So I watched over that year as it shredded with the weather, bits flying, who knows where to, who knows what, to our local ecology. I think, you know, finding solutions to plastic bags would be great. I appreciate the presenters, including the exemption for SNAP recipients. I would also like to see some exceptions made outside of government assistance because there's stigma. So some people don't participate in those, even if they need them. And I did appreciate Sharice's comment on paper bags as well. I think that would make a really nice, cheaper option to incentivize a more easily recyclable, compostable alternative. But I think the goal should be a cultural shift towards reusable bags, since not a lot of people compost and our recycling often winds up in landfills despite good intentions, and paper is biodegradable and wouldn't stay stuck in a tree for a year, but still requires stuff to be manufactured. And so maybe my suggestion would be the council could provide some sort of incentive to using reusable bags while charging for paper and plastic. Oh, just made it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Okay, next up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm happy. I'm really happy. I want to thank Sharice for her comments last week. We don't agree a lot, but we also have very frank conversations, and that's infrequent too. But in the absence of those, I still want to recognize the comments that you made last week in support of the Dr. Ellis subdivision issue. Historically, it's just been the Ward 3 alderperson voicing support. That's not good enough. And I say this because we saw multiple alderpersons supporting, I think it was WUNA, when they wanted some protections for their community as they saw it. Well, this is an issue in Urbana, and we have had this for decades as an issue where it has been organized on since 2013 by Rev Dr. Evelyn and other activists. So I'd really appreciate it if more than one alderperson would specifically tackle that. And I apologize if folks talked about that last week. I was reviewing certain notes, but I don't know if you had. So I just wanted to make that explicit comment there, that this is an issue that has been championed by alderpersons of Ward 3 pretty consistently, and it's not been enough. I also want to say that I am, of course, speaking in support of the Match the Mill campaign for expanding the support for workforce training program. I always see this stuff going on where people are talking about schooling and why their schools aren't doing that great. If you look at the poverty statistics, it suddenly lines up pretty cleanly. And I know that there's some skews. Poverty can affect communities more severely than others. But the point is, it's poverty. There's a really poignant poem on this. And I'm not somebody who actually likes poems, but I think that this one actually provides a, how to best say, it helps to humanize what's being talked about here when we're talking about expanding the support for workforce training program, and why, despite politicians not being happy that we're talking about it, the real reason we're talking about it is not to dig at any politicians. So with that, I'll quickly close in a poem. Can't believe that I'm doing that, but nonetheless, here we go. It's entitled "'Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil" by Joshua T. Dickerson. I woke myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket because I ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed because I ain't got a pencil. I've driven kids to school whose single mothers are strung between multiple jobs. I've seen kids who have, to this day, come to my door and ask me to read things to them. The reason that I support the expansion of the support for workforce training program is because you get good paying jobs for those single parents. You know what? They don't need 2 jobs now. They can spend more time raising their families and even maybe afford childcare for things that they need to do to function in this society as equally as the folks on city council. Have a good night.
Thank you, Alan. Let's see. Next up is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Hello, am I coming through clear?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Hi, my name is Eddie Pratt Jr. I am a resident of Champaign. I'm speaking to you tonight in the capacity of the campaign lead for Match the Mill, the community-led initiative to see equity highlighted and brought into our community via our workforce equity initiative. So all roads lead back to inequity, be it gun violence, housing instability, food deserts. All of these things go right back to inequity. It's hard to get away from. As much as we, spend our time trying to get away from it, it's utterly impossible. And as the pandemic has ravaged households, it's the blueprint, the byproduct of that inequity has been made clear to us ever since, which comes right back to things like community violence being one byproduct. We've spent a lot of time anguishing, trying to figure out a way forward. How can we find a way forward? And honestly, I don't agree with a lot of the rhetoric that places a lot of the blame on parents who are, frankly, more than exhausted, working in dynamics that don't give them the ability to actually be parents to their children more than they can be part-time caretakers. And then we wonder why these children out here are, well, savage, as they like to say, doing all the things that they do. We wonder, where are their parents? Well, if they have survived the trauma of living, through their parents' trauma that was also beget probably by inequity, then they're at work. And well, can you fault them for being at work? Isn't that where they're supposed to be, to, earn a living, provide a home? But that's really hard to do when people aren't making enough to do so. For a long time, there have been things that we as a community and also as a country have allowed to happen, and more so to build. Inequity built on inequity just equals more violence for us all to either partake or be victim to. If we want a safer community, a more well community, if we really want to put the onus on the parents of these children, then we have to arm them with the ability to take care of a home, to be parents, to have a work-life balance, to have the financial, money to have the resources that you need for things like childcare and formula and things like that, right? Again, and maybe I should just say this out loud. Match the Mill is not a political Trojan horse. We've seen even gun violence used as a Trojan horse for political gain as of late. This is not that. This is for the people, by the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. I'm going to check. Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, your hand was up. Would you like to speak? Okay, maybe not. Anybody? Yes, there you are. Go ahead, Reverend. You're still muted. There you go.
I have so much to say, but I think it would be wise for me right now, since I don't have all of my material together. But I appreciate the comments by the two gentlemen. But I want to, I was on a meeting the other night about their staff report, the FY 22-23 annual action plan staff report. We were on a meeting the other night, a Zoom meeting about that. And I am just so disappointed, as I told the staff there. Hopefully they'll look into some of the things that we talked about and try to talk to some of the people in addition to the groups that they have been working with. For an example, we used to have the Reinvestment Act that John Lee Johnson brought in. Yes, he's gone, but into this community in the 80s, I was a member of one, the Busey Bank one. There was others with other banks. Now they just have a group of bankers that's working on this. Where are the people? Where are the people? I don't know. Can we reinstitute the Community Reinvestment Act? That was a federal act. So maybe it's just the bankers not meeting together as a group with these people trying to tell them what the people need. But from what I'm understanding, in the 80s and later on when other people were on the Community Reinvestment Act Advisory Committee, and where we went door to door, did a lot of different things to bring to the banks the needs of the people. Now the bankers is policing themselves. And so it behooves the city and the city staffs to go out and try to get more people to home, the CBDG, all that. And I thought there were targeted areas. But the staff people gave me some information that there have been some changes, I guess, but they're not good changes. They're not good changes. See, we're saying we want to stop the gun violence, victory over violence and all that. But then when I hear on what's happening in Champaign, they got to justify the little money that they're giving in Champaign. Urbana has done nothing. Now, how are we going to put in? Now, we can talk. I could talk, but I need to put in writing something. Maybe I need to send it to all the city council people, plus the mayor, of what we really need. Just sitting up here talking 4 minutes is not going to get to it. And the people that I talk to, are y'all going ahead and trying to do the surveys and all of that? Something I don't even know how to do that. You know, so what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I don't want to be attacking, but I just have to bring out the things that I see, the things that the people are talking about. And I did mention the housing, the reparation that they're doing up in Evanston. We need to look into that to help people get housing. What funds are they using? What fund? The city is all in. That's in Illinois. Are we looking into that and seeing that's something we can do? I did mention it to the staff the other night when I was on Zoom about I'm a member of a national organization, and there are people from Evanston who are in the same organization, and they've been talking about some of the things the city is trying to do there. Not perfect, because it's not going to be perfect, because this is a capitalistic society, and we know they're going to look into the businesses. And if you're poor, they're not going to look out for you. But that's why we were talking the other night. We need to get more manufacturing here in America. Go back.
Reverend,
Is my
Reverend
time up?
Underwood, your time is up.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right. I said I had a lot to say. I'm sorry.
You're all right. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else, so I guess we move on. Thank you to all the public inputters. Okay, so next up is staff report, the FY 2022-2023 annual action plan staff report. And I'm assuming that's Sheila Dodd present.
Hey, Chris, can you make Braden Belcher a panelist? He's going to present.
Okay, Bremer, can you put up Mr. Welch's?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Oh, gosh. I'm having some technical issues. I'll just stop my camera. I'll share my screen here. All right. Hopefully you can all see my slides. So yeah, tonight I am providing a brief update on the city's annual action plan process for fiscal year 2022-2023. So the Community Development Services Department is in the process of developing the annual action plan for this upcoming fiscal year. The plan will be submitted to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for review and approval so that the city can continue to receive community development block grant funding as well as funding through the Home Investment Partnership Program. So first I'll talk a little bit about what the planning process looks like for the city. So the annual action plan is a required component of the 5-year consolidated plan. City Council approved the current consolidated plan back on June 8th, 2020. And that consolidated plan covers fiscal years 2020 through 2024. So the consolidated plan outlines how the city is going to utilize HUD resources during the 5-year planning period. All projects that the city funds through the Community Development Block Grant or HOME programs must be consistent with the goals, strategies, and objectives that we outline in the consolidated plan. The 1-year annual action plan outlines the activities that the city is undertaking utilizing these HUD funds during a 1 program year period. The annual action plan also explains how these activities relate back to those goals and strategies and objectives that we originally outlined in the consolidated plan. So in our annual action plan, we not only have to say, you know, what activities are we going to be undertaking during that year, but also how do they relate back to that consolidated plan. So for fiscal year 2022-2023, the city expects to receive roughly $500,000 in CDBG funding and about $175,000 in Home Investment Partnership funding. HUD has not announced the official amounts yet. These are kind of the expected resources we are planning to receive. We will be bringing this plan back to City Council in April for final approval once we have those numbers. So you will be seeing me again. You will be seeing this plan again, and at that time in April, when you approve it, we'll have the official budget in place. But right now, these are the expected resources that we have so far. And then, as I mentioned, the city, we are required to submit a plan every year so that we can continue to receiving funds through these 2 grant programs. So I'm going to talk about each program individually, just very briefly, and then outline the eligible activities under each of these grant programs. Now, when I say eligible activities, what I mean is that HUD regulations outline the type of programs you can fund under each program. So this is not me saying this is what we're going to do. This is HUD has their regulations saying, what type of activities, what type of projects can be funded through their programs. And staff has to make sure that any program we undertake abides by those regulations. Otherwise, we'll get in trouble, and that's no fun. So as you can see here, under the CDBG program, the city is able to fund public services, rental assistance programs, public facilities, and also improvements to public facilities, also blight removal projects, and lead-based paint remediation activities. One thing I'll note here very briefly is that HUD places a 15% cap on public service spending. Now, what that means is that the city we couldn't take that entire $500,000 CDBG allocation and use it toward public services. HUD would cap us at only 15% of that allocation. So that just means, as we plan for the next year, we have to think strategically about how can we utilize these funds and make sure that any money we're spending on public service programming is at or below that 15% cap. That's just kind of an important thing to know. During COVID, that cap was lifted, which was very nice. We could spend as much as we wanted on public services, but now that some of the COVID regulations have gone away, we're back to that 15% cap again for the next planning year.
Just as a side note on that, rental assistance is considered a public service. So unfortunately, if somebody did need help with rent and we made that a priority in the plan this year, we could only help them with 3 months, but that would take away what we could offer for social services. So it's a balancing act.
Yes, that's a great point. Thank you, Sheila. So for the Home Investment Partnership Program, it's tailored a little bit more specifically to affordable housing projects. So under the Home Program, you can fund housing rehabilitation programs, down payment assistance, rental assistance, the construction of affordable housing, and also the construction of special needs housing. So just some of our accomplishments this past year. Since July 1, 2020, the city has, with these grant programs, the city has funded 6 home repair grants for low to moderate income residents of Urbana. We started an energy efficiency grant program in partnership with Ameren. We also sponsored a neighborhood cleanup day back in September, and that was for residents of our targeted neighborhoods. And that was a great event. We served over 200 households that day for the cleanup event, and we're excited to be offering another a spring cleanup coming up in May. And again, those events specifically target residents of our targeted neighborhoods. We also started a down payment assistance program, and then back in November, we launched the Youth Services Grant, which has dedicated $100,000 to local agencies that provide community-based services and programming to Urbana youth. So the public process is really important as we develop this annual action plan. So the 30-day public comment period started last Tuesday, March 15th, and it will run through April 15th. During this time, city staff have been conducting public hearings, as you heard, to get feedback from citizens and to hear what needs they see in their neighborhoods and how they think this funding can be used to meet those needs. We held public hearings even dating back to last year in September of 2021, January 25th, 2022, we held a public hearing. And then on March 15th, we had a public input session as well. We've been meeting with, also I'll note, we launched a community needs survey, which again is just hopefully, we have it in paper and also online. So there's a link that was sent out to various neighborhood organizations and housing providers in the community. But there also are paper surveys available as well for residents who would be more comfortable filling out a paper survey. And again, those surveys are just to gain some feedback on, again, what needs people are seeing in their neighborhoods and how they think these programs can meet those needs. Staff have also been consulting with various community groups, and this list here is not representative. This is just some examples of groups we've been consulting with. So the Human Services Council of Champaign County, as well as the Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless, the Community Reinvestment Group, which is a consortium of banks that are required to invest in affordable housing projects. And then also, again, like I said, neighborhood groups we've been consulting with as well. We do acknowledge that, during COVID, it's posed a challenge, to not necessarily always be able to safely go out into the community and meet people face to face. So we are excited as, some COVID restrictions are lifted to be able to get back out there, because we know that the best way to hear what people have to say is to go to their neighborhood, go to their churches, go to their events. And so we've been doing the best with the restrictions that have been in place. And we look forward to, in the future, engaging with the public face to face again. I think we'll all be glad to get back to that system. So the draft plan is available for the public to view. It's available in several different places. There's a digital copy available on our website, on the community development page. But if residents prefer to view it a hard copy, there is a copy available at the Urbana Free Library, and also there are copies available at the Urbana City Building, at the City Clerk's office, and also at the Community Development Department front desk. So that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions? Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. My first question, which you answered, but I'm still not finding, is where to find the draft of this current year's annual plan. I looked online, I'm on the Community Development Services page now, and I'm not seeing the current draft.
So if you go to, on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a little tab that says Grants Management. So if you click there, it's down, and it's the website does it. All the documents are at the bottom, so you kind of have to scroll to the bottom to see the. And on the website, it's the fiscal year 2022-2023 City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plan. It's also on the if you go to Boards and Commissions, if you go to the Community Development page, it's there as well. But again, that's why we provide the hard copies, just in case that's easier for people to find.
Thank you. I see that now. I don't have specific questions on it because I wasn't able to find it until now. And then I was also looking for the survey. Is that on the same page anywhere?
I just sent them out late Friday, so I can happily send that link to you. I do want to get it on the website. I wanted to prioritize getting it out to the neighborhood group, so I did that on Friday, and then also yesterday, Sheila and I had the opportunity to meet with some affordable housing providers, and we gave it to them as well. But I'll happily send that out. I want to spread it as wide as possible. I do know there's that ARPA survey going around, and I don't want to confuse people with all these surveys, but I'll happily send that out to council. Thank you.
Yeah, and putting it on the webpage, is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. And then I was wondering why the expected CDBG and home funding is expected to be less than this year from last year, if that was some home ARPA and the new census, or why that's expected to be less this year than last year.
Braden, I can answer this one. We
Sure.
belong to the National Community Development Association, who does a lot of policy advocacy in DC. And what they're seeing out of the continuing resolution discussions at Congress is that CDBG will come in a little less. So we're guesstimating 500,000. And then the 175,000 is Urbana's portion of the home funds. So the grant itself is larger than that. We're guessing it's going to be about 850,000, but our portion of that we can, set priorities on is 175,000. And it's not been unusual the last few years for us to get to this time of year and not know our actual allocation. So what we've done is say that we'll adjust it proportionally. So if the, CDBG is 3% more, then we'll adjust our budgets by 3% so that we can come in and meet that deadline. But we're just kind of waiting on Congress at this point.
Thank you.
Sharice?
Yeah, I guess what I would like to have is a definition of what low to moderate income is.
Sharice, the bond cap memo follow-up memo that I provided last week, those income guidelines are on there. And so if you look at the chart on the second page, we have to serve people at 80% of that median family income or below.
Okay.
And I can email that to you separately if you want.
Could you, because I've got like a bunch of papers here that I'm not,
Sure.
I have to look that up.
That definition is defined by HUD every year. Usually May, June-ish, we get the new numbers.
Okay, are you talking about, I don't know if you can see it.
I can't. It's a chart that
It's the
has,
chart,
like,
yeah, that says
family size and-
median family income limits 2021.
Yep, that's
it. And 86,400 is the median.
Right, and we can help people up to 80%. So if you look at a 2-person family and you can go over to that 80%, that's the maximum gross income the family can have.
Okay.
Typically, that's not a problem with our programs hitting, people hitting that mark, but that's the guidelines were provided by HUD.
So the low to moderate is like the low, like with where it says family size, for example, two persons. The low is the 20,750, and the median, the 80% would be 55,300.
Yes.
Okay. No, you don't even have to send me that now. I understand it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chandra?
Hi, so Braden mentioned targeted areas several times in the presentation. So I'd like to clarify what the targeted area is, and if the target area are those like low to moderate income areas. Is that how you determine targeted areas?
It's determined by census tract and block group.
Okay.
So there should be under community development services a target area map, but it may be included in the draft plan. If not, it is included in the final plan, and I can share that with you as well. But it's just the definition of the census tracts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Grace?
Thank you. I was wondering if there was or was going to be an update from the last annual action plan. Because looking through there, I see lots of great like objectives, goals, outcomes, strategies, all these kinds of things. And I didn't know if there was a plan for having an update from the last year's annual action plan.
There is. When the fiscal year ends June 30th, we have 90 days to do our consolidated annual performance evaluation report. And that will be submitted to you for review. So, at this point, we don't really have final numbers to report and won't till June 30.
And is that when we were talking about goals, we talked about an update on housing stuff in September? Is that?
Yep.
What
that's
that
it.
is? Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. So Sheila, that was just a report, so we're not going to vote on anything tonight.
No, we just wanted to make you aware of that it's available for you to start looking at.
Okay, great. And we're going to get another report in April. Is that correct?
You'll get the final report, and any public comments we've received will be included in that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, going on to the next thing. It looks like resolution number 2022-03-024R, a resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds, and related matters, private bond cap allocation and assistant programs, series 2022, and this is with community development again. So Sheila, are you presenting this again?
Sure. I sent to council last Thursday some follow-up questions that Jaya had and the answers from the assistant administrator. So just, are there any other questions, or does council feel like they're ready to move forward with this?
Grace?
Thanks. I think there's still some questions on my end, particularly about the amount that we were told it was a 2,000 straight up amount, and then saying that it is 35% of the annual interest paid up to $2,000. And I think the reason for that being important is it's hard not to see that to feel that this program benefits people at a higher home buying equity, with more benefits and less benefits with people with a smaller home loan. And actually, my other question, going back in the last presentation, Braden just mentioned a down payment assistance program from like CDBG and Home Stuff. And I didn't know if that was a city program, or if you could share about that.
Sure. The responses that I sent from David Roush clarifies the $2,000 percentage question. So it's a little bit of both. It's a percentage of the mortgage interest you paid up to a cap of $2,000. So, and then if you happen to pay, which in these day and age with mortgage interest as low as it is, if you happen to pay $3,000, but the cap is $2,000, you can carry over that excess balance for up to 3 years. So that's that answer. We have ran two different down payment programs since I've been at the city. One was with the home funds, and we had set aside like $165,000 for that program, and we had 7 loans. The way that the home program worked, they had to have the owner sign off that said once it was inspected, if there were any problems found, the owner had to fix it. And so owners weren't real interested in having their buyers participate in it, because they didn't want to have to go back in and do repairs that might have been minor, but the city requires them to do it. And that was governed by HUD, how that program worked. It was pretty cumbersome, and there was only one lender in town that would use it. So when we went to redesign the program, we worked with our CRA lenders to try to decide what the best use was. And so this year we've offered a similar program through CDBG, and it offers a variety of choices. So it can be 50% of the required down payment. It can be closing cost and points. It could be buying down the private mortgage insurance. That program has been in place since July 1, and we've had one lender do one loan. So it's kind of like with Assist, you guys are wondering why people don't use it. Unfortunately, with some lenders just don't use these programs as much as we'd like them to. They just don't. So I'm not sure going forward that we'll continue to do the down payment program. Maybe there's a better use for us to put our money someplace else that will actually be used.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification on that.
Sure.
And I definitely think we need to be, efficient on what's helpful and what's used. And I think also doing, a real good public awareness kind of thing would be helpful. I doubt that, people who need assistance with down payment and closing costs are just uninterested. I imagine that a lot of people just aren't aware of this.
Any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion for this?
I will move to City Council with the recommendation for approval, resolution number 024R, resolution approving the transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues for single family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters for private bond cap allocation assist program series 2022.
A
Thank
second.
you, Mary Alice. Thank you, Sharice. Any further discussion? Sharice.
I just want to make a comment regarding this. for so long, for a very long time. And I think in particularly, when I think about when my parents bought their home, there were no programs like this for anybody. There wasn't any kind of assist. There wasn't any kind of tax credit. As a matter of fact, my parents had to get their loans out of state in order to even have a mortgage, because the banks in Champaign-Urbana did not loan to Black people for a mortgage. So I think anything that will go to help someone become a homeowner, and I'm a big advocate of owning a home, is totally better than what they had at their disposal at the time. So I think this should just go and move to council for approval, because the whole point is to try to help people to access, and maybe we could do better with certain other things as far as advertising it and so on and so forth. But the fact that it's even available is a huge step up forward from what used to be. So I think this should definitely be moved for approval to council.
Chandra?
Right, thanks. So I do support the idea of the assist program and helping first-time home buyers with, whatever sort of incentives. But I also think that the other program which we approved last time may focus more on the population that needs the most help. And so I would recommend that we fund the two programs. I think the other one was IDAE or something like that. Instead of 50-50, go 70-30, and given this program the 30%.
Go ahead, Marielle.
So I think the thing that struck me last week when that representative came was that there's no guarantee that any developer would be leveraging these funds at all for the affordable housing. And that it is something that is an option out there, which is great that we have that option. But the one thing about the assist program is that we've seen they've helped lots of people in our community earn potentially up to a $2,000 credit on tax return. So if we're looking at kind of utilization of our funds, I'm kind of like what Sheila was talking about, like how if we have these programs, we want people to be able to access the funds to assist them in their goals. So I still like the 50-50 split. It still gives a large amount of bonds accessible for affordable housing, but there's no guarantee that anybody will actually use that money when we have proof that people are using the assist funds for the intended purpose.
Grace.
I think Jay hasn't gone on this one.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
So maybe this is, again, going back to the question section more. I'm still struggling with this one, partially because even just looking at that list of lenders, none of the people listed are in Champaign-Urbana. So I think I'm still, in terms of, I understand we're seeing people use it. I think there's still some questions about exactly how this program is being shared with our community and who it is actually benefiting, because we're only seeing the loan amount. We're not seeing the income levels. We're not seeing the property values that these are going towards. And I think focusing on the needs of low income people, I would be in favor of shifting at least some portion towards those other programs away from this one. And it might be more for me of maybe a 60-40, and we can assess the impact after a year.
Grace.
Thank you. I had a question along those lines. I know we're past that point, but I think an important clarification here is if this assist program is like the IDHA one that we heard about last week, where it's more of a state pool funding, or if this is specifically for Urbana residents. So like if Urbana doesn't support it, then our residents no longer eligible for this assistance program, versus the other one seemed like it was a big state pool kind of regardless of how we funded individually through bonds. So I was wondering if it would be possible to have any clarification on that, if there is some.
That's correct, Grace. If we don't designate funding towards assist MCC program, then it won't be available to Urbana residents.
Thank you. And I had another question that Jaya mentioned, if you'd be willing to clarify the list of lenders that were not in Champaign-Urbana. I don't know if I saw that.
I raised that question after David sent me the list last week. And he said, those are typically the people that use it. And I said, well, how, if a local lender wanted to have access to it, what did they need to do? And he said, just reach out. He said that it's a very simple process and any lender is open to it. So I met with Busey Bank and they said, they just don't do it. There's some banks have enough down payment assistance and paperwork involved in the process. They don't access it, but some lenders do access it. So we can't make them participate, but since it is being used so well in the community, I still think it's a good program.
And is that another list you sent us? I just don't remember seeing a list of lenders and you're saying none of them.
It was in the link to Jaya's questions. David Roush answered them in red, and then he put a link to the lenders that were accessing the program.
I see.
And then Braden meets with our community reinvestment group every month. And, we can promote the program again through them, asking them if they want to join and use it because it is beneficial.
Thank you.
Chandra, I saw your hand up a few times, but James Quisenberry hasn't gone yet. So I'm going to go to James.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, my camera is off. I am remote on a trip, and so video is a little challenging. But I did want to say I do want to support this, and I do want to maintain the 50-50 split because we know that residents of the city of Urbana will benefit from access to capital that they wouldn't otherwise be able to own homes. And I understand why some people might be concerned about why banks aren't in Champaign-Urbana aren't participating in it, but whoever the bank is that's taking advantage of it, the citizen of Urbana still benefits from it. It's not, in this world where your bank might not even be in the state of Illinois, it may be online completely for your checking account or whatever banking you're doing. I don't feel that that's a barrier that Busey Bank isn't taking this as a program. If we don't pass this, or if we restrict it to 70-30, what we're saying is we don't want this capital available to citizens who have been taking advantage of it over the last several years. And it may be that you want to do more for citizens that don't fit into that profile for home ownership, but we don't get to that by restricting this, by taking this off the table for those lower middle class citizens who are trying to own homes. So that's why I'm completely on board with going forward and would like to maintain the 50-50 split. I don't, going 70-30 means 70% might not get used at all. We know how often low income large developments happen in Urbana. It's not very often. The frequency of that, maybe that should be more often, but that's, based on developers getting interested in it. And so something that's being used year to year, something we can show, how many citizens are being able to take advantage of capital we don't have to spend, but we can make available. That's why I would like to support it at 50-50 and move forward.
Sharice, did you want to make another comment? You're muted.
Sorry, keep hitting the wrong button there. I guess my question is this. I don't think this is even about people building a home as much as buying a home. Is that correct, Sheila?
That's correct.
So it's not even about whether someone is building something from the ground up or a developer. It's just about having these services available to people who are purchasing their first home. And I think that that could be benefit anyone who decides that they want to own and not rent anymore. And I'm sure that that if you're trying to make that type of decision, if you're making that type of decision, you've come to that conclusion that you do not want to rent anymore and you're going to own, then the basic things that most people do start to do, at least used to, is saving up for a down payment, trying to get a budget together and all of those things, so that and then you can have this extra thing that may be helpful. It may be the worst thing is just that not enough people know about these programs, that they are available, even if they are just purchasing a home. It's not about building. So that's just something to take into consideration as well.
Chandra.
So you're right, it's not about necessarily building new construction. From what I understand about the description about the IHDA bond caps is they look to acquire and improve affordable homes. And to me, that sounds like, rehabbing existing structures so that they're available at affordable prices so that they can be bought by first-time home buyers. So that's the way I was interpreting it. And I see putting more investment towards something like that being more beneficial than building new homes and that such. So
Chandra, can I make a correction?
Please.
IDA tends to build large multifamily housing. That's their investment. So like a Crystal View, a Bristol Place, a Highland Green, that's where IDA makes its investments. If somebody is looking at a piece of property in Urbana and they apply for housing tax credits, they usually go to IDA for that and those larger programs. They don't do single family rehab projects with this pot of money. They don't do it with any pot that I'm aware of right now.
Well, that's how the description reads. So sorry if I misinterpreted the description you provided.
Any more discussion? Okay, I guess, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
No.
Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Wilkin,
No.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Next item is resolution number 2022-03-027R, a resolution amending the 2021 capital improvement plan for Florida Avenue Federal Raise Grant to be presented by the Public Works Department. And Tim, I'm assuming that's you.
That is. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen here. Can everybody see this? Just a map here of Florida Avenue?
Yep.
Okay, great. So The gist behind this was the Florida Avenue project has been in our queue and our capital improvement plan for over 5 years at this point, generally on the outskirts, and we're now closing in on ready to move forward with it. Last year in the 2021 CIP, we just utilized the numbers that had been provided by prior staff for these improvements, and some of those they're inadequate is what we found between passing the 2021 CIP and approaching the 2022 CIP right now. We intended on making these adjustments and bringing them to you for the 2022 CIP, but in late January, we received notice of a funding opportunity for the RAISE grant, which would make us eligible for 100% of the cost for this improvement post-award. So to date, in FY 2022, we are nearing the completion of the corridor study, which had robust public input. And that ship was captained by Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, really analyzing the intersections and use and level of service along this corridor. We're reaching the end of that and getting ready to enter into preliminary engineering. And as we were doing through the corridor study, we were talking about, expanding the scope to the west to include this small section of Florida that otherwise would have been not included in this and prioritized with later capital improvement projects. The justification for pursuing this additional segment to the west was once this is completed, this section is semi-cut off from the rest of Urbana. It's also of a similar condition as the rest of these. As you can see, I'll drag this screen over. Pavement condition wise, this is the corridor we're looking at from Blair Park here at Vine Street through Lincoln, and then the expansion would then be from Lincoln to our west boundary at Wright Street extended. And all of the conditions of these pavements are very similar in the sense that they are very low condition right now, really warranting reconstruction. So initially when we were looking at this project and we noticed that there was inadequate funds for this, we were talking about, should we pivot and try to pursue rehabilitation via structural mill and overlay project in lieu of reconstruction based on the exorbitant funding differences between the two. In late January, we were contacted by Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District inquiring if we'd be interested in pursuing this RAISE grant funding, which could potentially fund 100% of the improvements as we are considered a rural area by the definitions of the funding. So in doing so, it made a lot of sense to, really pursue the reconstruction over the 15-year rehab cycle. It needs reconstruction. It's to that level. It's one of our highest used arterials, seeing 10,000 plus average annual daily traffic. And then the shared use path that's proposed from Lincoln to Race was the top priority that came out of the 2016 bicycle master plan. And that would be incorporated with these improvements as well. Some of the speculation, because we haven't found detailed estimates of where the original came from. In 2017, they may have been using the back of envelope for 4 or 5 years out and perceiving that this is maybe just a mill and fill project, or perceiving this as reconstruction but isolated to the roadways. What we're talking about now is really an MCOR level improvement, full roadway reconstruction, shared use path, potentially other utilities getting involved and engaged in doing replacements of those along the way. This is prioritized in our long-range transportation plan and the transportation improvement plan that the CUATS board reviews and votes on. Right now, the challenges of funding it through that is we only see about $2 to $3 million in regional grant funding through CUATS annually, and that's shared throughout the region, not just Urbana. So that's Urbana, Champaign, Savoy, the other extreme areas within the region. So taking on something like this with that funding, they would not effectively be able to support an 80-20 split, which is the most recent split for that CUATS funding. The big things that we tied to the inadequate original estimates, it did not include preliminary engineering or construction engineering. It did not include signalized intersections, which was kind of identified as the best solution via the corridor study. And it did not include the west boundary, completing the roadway from the Lincoln to the west there. With all of those taken into account, we've increased from a little over $4.5 million to almost $12 million if we're going to pursue full-blown reconstruction. The reason we're coming to you now instead of the capital improvement plan for 2022 is because of this funding opportunity. The applications are due April 14th. So we've been working with CUMTD and CCRPC on completing a funding application for this in hopes of getting this fully funded for reconstruction throughout the corridor. Effectively, if we receive full funding for this, we've anticipated to kind of begin pursuing the preliminary engineering with the CUATS 80/20 grant funds, which would not be eligible for then the grant because we cannot, any contracts or funds that we expend before obligation would not be eligible for the 100% cost share. If we don't get funded through the RAISE grant, ideally it would be beneficial for us to be more prepared and have the preliminary engineering done. This kind of falls in line with some of the council goals we've been discussing of, being prepared for funding opportunities, and shovel ready is a term that you'll hear a lot of times. Completion of preliminary engineering is really what grant agencies typically consider shovel ready, as we have it designed, we have the permits, we're ready to go to bid. So we don't want to hold that up. The intent would be to still pursue the preliminary engineering with the CUATS 80/20 funding. We would be responsible for 20% of just under $1 million with that. And we've got $40,000 that we're dedicating to some conceptual engineering to get this application to a point that increases our odds of getting this right now. So effectively, the idea would be, provided we get the RAISE grant funding, we'd be pursuing full reconstruction along this corridor, approximately a $12 million project. And if awarded this and granted the 80/20 from the CUATS, we would be expending $230,000 of local funds for almost $12 million of infrastructure work. That's why we wanted to bring this to you ahead of time. Part of the grant application indicates if the project is included in the long-range transportation plan, the transportation improvement plan with our MPO, and it's included and incorporated in our capital improvement plan as of the application date, it strengthens the application. And although it's included in our 2021 CIP, the numbers are not reflective of what we're looking to pursue at this time. So that's why we're looking to amend the 2021 CIP to reflect full reconstruction along this corridor, including the west Lincoln to the west boundary. And I feel like I talked a lot, so if anybody has questions or wants clarifications, please feel free.
Any questions? James.
Yeah, just a quick question. With this change, will that change the schedule with how the RPC is moving forward with the design input on this work?
Are you referring to the corridor study right now, James?
Yeah.
No, we are looking, the corridor study, we've got final recommendations that we're just looking to finalize and issue for final follow-up public engagement. That's still slated to be completed here in the next month or so.
So if someone wants to recommend that Florida be a left turn, center lane, right turn intersection going east instead of a race to the single lane on the other side of that intersection, there's still time for people to give that feedback.
Correct. And
okay.
we did look at that. We've got some feedback on that from the final recommendations that we'll share with everybody.
Okay.
Currently, it appears to meet the standard regulations for that. I driving through there, I recognize, sometimes that feels a little tight, but we do have some other restrictions there in that area for extending the merge lane. We probably could extend it some, but we've got the President's access way that's just to the east of there. But yeah, we have looked at that. I think the idea of changing the lanes to the west actually decreased the level of service of the Lincoln intersection. But yes, people will have an opportunity to give additional feedback on our final recommendations.
Thank you.
Sharice, did you want to ask a question? Okay, Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Tim. I have a few questions. I was wondering if I heard you correct. You're saying that if we don't get the RAISE funding, the RAISE grant, then we will not do the whole expanded version of the project, but we'll have these plans and studies for future opportunities. Is that right?
I think kind of. So the idea will be with anything of this scale, the two options we would have is we get the design completed as is, and we pursue, assuming RAISE is an opportunity again in early next year, we could pursue that funding again and kind of sit on the plans and pursue grant funding like we've talked about, being prepared for that stuff. The other option is if we decide, we didn't get the grant funding, but the council feels, yes, this is still a priority. We need to do something on this road and we don't want to wait to pursue grant funding. We could pursue value engineering the design back to maybe pursuing like a functional overlay where it would be like a 3 or 4 inch mill and overlay. The downfall of that stuff, typically your overlays are slated for a 15 to 20 year life cycle, whereas a full reconstruction is probably going to be targeting a 45 to 60 year life of this roadway. And probably the cost, I think we looked at that initially because we were looking to value engineer it when we first realized that there was an issue with the budget. And I think that the costs were 7 or 8 million if we downgraded it down to a functional overlay. So it's not quite as great of a decrease as that would be impactful, but we would have options would be the answer. We could either sit on the design and pursue other grant opportunities, or we could look at revising the design and pursuing it sooner than later. So
thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that we weren't committing to this necessarily today. And that sounds like that's not the case, right? We can see where it goes if we don't get the grant, right?
Right. And the amendment to the CIP includes us, projecting an $11 million revenue from the grant. So if the grant doesn't come through, the idea would be that we would be pivoting on how we would be approaching this project.
Thank you. And yeah, looking at the more detailed budget stuff, it looks like there was the 40,000 kind of rearranged from bike lanes and sidewalks and landfill management for the resurfacing planning, and just felt compelled to ask that's, I assume obviously okay, but if you could just explain why, we can spare that from the landfill and the other planned bike and sidewalks.
Yeah, and that was actually moved a couple meetings ago during the budget amendment. And the idea there being, we don't have a standalone project for the bike lanes and side paths that we think is going to be completed in the next few months. So this being the highest priority for bike lanes and side paths from the 2016 bicycle master plan, we felt that was the best use of this $20,000 in this fiscal year. The landfill management, we are just now getting engaged with a consultant to look at some lift station upgrades out at the landfill. And the landfill is kind of a passive liability that we have as the city, but nonetheless a liability. The $30,000 is enough to get us. The initial $50,000 that we had scoped for that was to help us scope improvements to these lift stations and force mains. The $30,000 will be enough to get the initial scope, and hopefully between now and the end of the year, that scope will help us revisit the $100,000 that we have allocated for next fiscal year for the landfill. That could be less or more, but this initial scope of the $30,000 I think will suffice for at least getting the scoping initiated with this consultant.
Thank you. And then I was trying to make sense of, so the first versus second page of the budget, capital replacement and improvement fund plan. Because I see the first page, there's that 40,000 rearranged for right to Vine on Florida street resurfacing and planning and construction. And then on the second page, there's the same line item with some other amounts. And I'm confused if that's the same thing or something different.
It's all the same project. Those two sheets that you see, Grace, represent different funds. So that's the 200 fund, the capital reinvest replacement and improvement fund, which is unrestricted funds we use for capital projects. And then the second is our state motor fuel tax funds. So that's the CUATS grant money, and then our own state motor fuel tax funds utilized for the remainder of the improvements.
And that's the one towards the bottom of the page, this 900 some thousand and 10 million is the state motor fuel tax.
That it's a combination. So the idea would be the CUATS grant. If you look at the top of that page, there's a 756,800. That would be a CUATS 80% to pay for the preliminary engineering. The 946 would be the total amount. So our difference between 946 and 756 would be state motor fuel tax funds. And then the 11 million raise grant at the top represents paying for the other 11 million that are shown in fiscal year 25 plan at the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
It's a little challenging because there are so many different funding sources here. The first page is kind of what I would consider truly local unrestricted. The second page is local funds provided by the state, so there are restrictions with them.
Thank you. And then overall, this kind of big picture plan was kind of connectivity between campus to downtown Urbana, right? So I was wondering, like, the mixed use path and like bike lanes, are we not planning to continue that all the way to Vine and then Vine to downtown?
So as of now, that was not identified in the bicycle master plan. So the connectivity partially is to get to downtown, but also to connect to, we have a Race Street side path running south along Race Street. The other challenge that we have that may be considered during preliminary engineering, we just have a lot of mature trees and limited right of way as you head east of Race, between Race and Vine. There's not really clearly adequate space to continue that shared use path up to Blair Park. That's something I would like to look at. Is it's just too close to say right now. Preliminary engineering, we can explore that option. Right now, I think we have on-street bikes facilities along Race or along Florida from Race to Vine, and then Blair Park has the shared use path there to move you towards downtown. But we don't have the shared use path currently extending from Race to Vine due to primarily the restrictions of right of way and existing structures along that stretch.
Okay, thank you. And I had one last question I've been meaning just to ask you, Tim, in general, as I'm driving around town, that it seems like, is it just me, or was this winter like particularly hard on the roads? Like, I feel like our potholes have grown like exponentially since this past winter. Is that a thing, or just seems like that every year?
It probably, honestly, it probably just seems like that every year. To my knowledge, we're not doing, I mean, I hear the operations folks, complain a little bit about, oh man, we got potholes everywhere. But I don't think that that's necessarily, I don't think that this winter was specifically harder than other winters we've had. Freeze thaw cycles are the primary culprits of popping potholes and things of that. The other challenges we have is we've got, we're all aware we have deteriorating roadway infrastructure. So, every year that we are not able to address roadway infrastructure, we have that much more to contend with and that many more potholes to contend with. So I would say it's probably perception. To my knowledge, I don't think that we've had more potholes than a normal year, but, some of them may have been worse than other years. I saw a few dandies, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have some questions? Mary Alice, could you take the chair?
Sure, I'd be happy to take the chair, and the chair recognizes Chris.
Thank you. Tim, thanks for the presentation. My questions are probably going to be a a little hard for you to answer at this early stage of the game, but I'm going to let's assume we get the $11 million race grant. Do you have any sense of how many people that would employ if we were able to get that kind of money?
We would anticipate upwards of 150 people for 2 construction seasons.
Okay.
That estimate has come from Rebuild Illinois that came out the last couple years. Some guidance that they had provided. We use those numbers to project the amount of jobs created from this project alone, and the estimate is upwards of 150.
Can we put some minority and women hiring contracting goals, such as 15 to 10% on the project?
I think we would have to look to make sure that we're going to have to adhere with whatever the federal requirements for the money are.
Okay.
That's not to say no, we cannot, but I'm just not 100% familiar with what those requirements are right now at the federal level.
Okay. Now at the local level, on our in our municipal code, we have restrictions for non-minority businesses that have to produce affirmative hiring goals to the Human Relations Commission. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yes, I am. All of our
Okay.
vendors have to submit their EEO applications for
Right.
review by the HRC, and the HRC works with them to either help, either they don't meet kind of the minimum requirements that we have for them, or our HRC helps provide them insights and guidance on how to enhance their hiring practices to better suit our needs.
Yeah, there's a kind of good faith effort
Correct.
provision, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And who's in charge of making sure that the vendor provides the HRC? Is just the HRC has to make sure, or is that you, or is that our equity officer? Who makes sure that happens?
It's a joint effort. So when we put together construction documents for bid, we have the provisions within our construction documents that require them to have an EEO certificate with the city.
Right.
They have to provide a vendor representation form, and a couple other things. It's a joint effort. HRC is not necessarily going to reach out to the vendor and look for it. We have to know to do that, because with our accounting software, we cannot create a purchase order unless we have those type of things checked off per our purchasing policy.
Great. Good to know. Okay, that's all I have. Mary Alice, I can take the chair back.
All right, I relinquish the chair back to Chris.
Thank you. Anybody else for questions? Okay, seeing none, can we get a motion?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Grace.
I would move for approval to City Council with recommendation for approval, regular agenda, resolution number 2022-03-027R, resolution amending the 2021 capital improvement plan for Florida Avenue Federal Raise Grant.
I'll second.
Seconded by Chandra. Any further discussion? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to say thank you, Tim. I actually really appreciate how thorough that was. I think this is a really exciting opportunity, and I hope the grant is successful. So thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, and I would also just put a plug in. Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District and both CCRPC have been critical to helping us meet this timeline for this application.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Chris, I think Diane has her
Chris.
hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't
Yeah.
see a full screen here.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add that this project was also advocated for by the Champaign County First Group, which is a coalition of local communities and some organizations. And we were lobbying our federal and state elected officials and agencies in the past couple of weeks specifically for this project and asking for their support as well. So this has the support of the countywide Champaign County First organization. And that effort is led by the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Diane. Anybody else? Okay, now I guess we can call the roll.
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
James, you wanted to say something?
I think council input's up next, right?
Yeah, council. I was just getting to that. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, so council
Didn't,
input.
didn't want to get ahead of myself there.
You're fine.
Yeah, I do
Council
want to
input.
apologize and do appreciate the opportunity Zoom presents to be able to be part of the meeting when one is traveling on business in a way that just a phone call does not really make it more conducive. A couple of things I want to mention. Unfortunately, I'm 30 minutes behind on an event I'm supposed to be attending at the conference that I'm at, so I'm going to have to leave after this. I do think that Chandra and I might be in the same place if our understanding of the split of the funds were equivalent. I'm thinking in terms of large multi-family investment, which I would want to be on the 50-50. It behooves us, Sheila, for Chandra and you to get together and have an understanding, I think, of what those two different things are, because I trust that Chandra's understanding is based on her research, and we should make sure that everybody's on the same page when we vote on something. I do also want to mention that it is definitely on my mind that the unprecedented ARPA funds that we have available to us should address longstanding infrastructure issues in the Ellis subdivision. I know when people attend our meetings, council input is usually about what that council member wants to talk about in that particular evening. It's not about we all don't weigh in on every topic that went before. I have not mentioned it to this point, but it's certainly on my mind, and I want to make sure people understand that. And we have a lot of decisions to make with this funding, but that's a long-standing issue that needs, if this is the opportunity to correct it, this is when we should do that. And so again, thank you for putting up with me being not cameraed tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all the next time.
Thank you, James. Diane?
To the Dr. Ellis subject, the sewer lateral issue in the Dr. Ellis subdivision was the subject of extensive council deliberation, conversations, staff reports, and staff meetings in the past 8 years while I was a council member. Hasn't been discussed lately, but we have a great deal of information that we can provide to the council to give you a more complete picture of what that issue is about, and we'll be doing that. And we also have a very extensive and generous compensation program for people who do experience extra expenses. But anyway, there's a whole lot more to the picture than what you've heard, and we'll provide that to you.
So Diane, are you talking about a separate presentation about that maybe?
A presentation, possibly a report. It's going to take a few weeks to pull all that information together, but you need to have the whole picture because you're not hearing the whole picture.
Right.
And we've spent hundreds of hours on this topic in past years.
Okay, thank you. Grace?
Thank you. Thanks for the heads up about more information on the Dr. Ellis neighborhood drainage sewage issues. I would definitely appreciate more information on that. And then ultimately, need to just get the problem fixed however we can. Yeah, in my time. Thank you. I also wanted to just remind people that there's the equals grant forms, the equity and quality of life, that looks like it's still active and would be a great place to submit that and others. I've tried to submit a form, and I don't know if sometime later staff has some input, but when you click it, it doesn't really seem like it submits. It like doesn't say it's submitted, nothing changes. It kind of doesn't seem like it submitted the form. So I don't know if there's some clarification on that later. And then also with the ARPA discussion, April 5th, the in-person town hall, I look forward to that. It looks like we don't have a time set for that yet. Just wondering if it would be possible, just a consideration, maybe sometime before 7, because there's also a commission meeting that day that I think some members would also like to attend, that ARPA town hall. And then a last item, as Dennis Roberts brought up with the sister cities and some of the issues with, war in Ukraine, and I have been approached and interested in possibly thinking about a resolution from us as council about the situation. I know it's definitely complicated, but something along the lines of peace and respectful diplomatic international relationships. So just throwing the idea out there, if any council members were interested in talking more about that, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Diane, go.
The ARPA in-person listening session is 5:30 to 7:30.
That's what I was going to say. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Looks like nobody else. All right. Going on to our next item is continuing conversation on council goals. I see Carol Mitten in the panelist. Carol, did you want to get us started, or you're muted?
Yeah, sorry. I got the video on and I didn't quite get the mic. I don't really have a whole lot because I had submitted to you, and it was in the packet so that the public could see it. Sort of the latest version of the color chart, which has been tracking all of the strategy areas and the strategies and the action steps. And so that the one thing, I had noted a couple of things we need some direction on. But other than that, you hadn't asked for any assistance with facilitation. So I thought you would be taking care of it. So, but I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help if you need me.
Okay. We got you in the bullpen ready to go. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments at this time? Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for getting this update to us, Carol, and whoever else was involved, maybe Will also from the last session. I did have a few comments about this. I'm still, again, a little confused about how we're deciding stuff. We kind of agreed before that if people agree, make a second, and it kind of makes it an agreed upon thing. So I would appreciate if anyone else agrees to kind of throw out a second on these. For the new stuff that we had talked about, for goal 3, promote community well-being under public safety and well-being. Under 3A, support Urbana Park District's Health and Wellness Center. I would think it would be more appropriate to remove that from the goals and have that be part of the ARPA discussion, because I feel that that is more the appropriate place for it. So that's my first thought on those new ones. And maybe I'll just see if there's thoughts on that one first.
A tie. Mary Alice?
So, this has always been one of my confusing points of two things, right? So number one, we have things that are already underway. We already have things that are in motion, and do they belong on the goals? And it sounded like consensus was, yes, they still belonged on the goals. We have a lot of other things on here that are ARPA. So I guess my inclination is if we're already including other items in ARPA, it would make sense to keep this here. Just because of the source of funds doesn't necessarily mean it's not a goal for city council.
Jay.
I was going to second the removal of that item, not because I don't think the Park District project is a worthy project, but because, and I'm not sure exactly when that one got added in. Unfortunately, missed a lot of this last meeting. But I don't know, that it's not something that I feel like there's been a ton of discussion around. And if I'm wrong and that's something that there was consensus on, that's fine. But my feeling was that that's something that, again, we need that feedback from the community about whether that is a priority for our community related to ARPA funding.
Sharice.
I'm just want to check a point of order of us voting anything or seconding anything when this is a discussion.
Yeah. I think we are just strictly discussion tonight. That is what is on the agenda.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
If
I think we're only discussing. Go ahead, Carol.
I just wanted to just, as I agree, you're just discussing and so forth, but I need sort of consensus direction as you change things, because that was part of, and I think James had captured that in some commentary after the last in-person session on February 22nd, which was, we need to know that it's the consensus of the group as opposed to one or two people that want something. So I, as the person who have been responsible for kind of channeling what the group wants, you don't necessarily have to vote, but you got to get enough head nods going that it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's what the group wants. So I just ask for sufficient head nods or something.
And Carol, you want direction from us on the two things that you emailed us, right?
Well, I mean, you had wanted to have, as I understand it, you, writ large group, wanted to have some final conversations about whether you have everything that you want on the action steps, whether they're in the proper priority order as you all see it. And then what I had asked for some additional direction on was, what are you looking for specifically to vote on? So early on, before we had gone through the last session, I had put forward for you to vote on in a resolution the strategy areas and then the strategies, and then I did, and then that the only thing that got voted on was strategy areas, which is fine. But there's I'm borrowing Kevin James's word, there's an organic quality to the action steps, because as we go through, some of them are explore XYZ, and we might find, oh, now that you've explored it, we actually want you on a priority basis to continue and implement XYZ, and that will maintain the priority status as opposed to explore, check the box, go to number 2. So how do you, if you decide you want to approve the action steps as well, how does that change as things move forward? So you all as a group need to give some direction about what it is exactly that you want to vote on.
Okay, thank you. Chandra?
Thank you.
I would suggest a straw poll. I think we've done that in the past when we need to just get a head count of what we agree on or not agree on. I also think that we could remove the Health and Wellness Center for similar reasons that Jay expressed. We haven't really gotten much community input around that. The presentation was good that the Park District gave, but after that, a lot of public input came in about, there wasn't very much communication with the community around that. So I think that we could remove that. And then also the Develop a Summer Jobs Program, I was looking at that part. Is that something that the community liaison person could sort of manage, since it is a collaboration with other community organizations? That's my suggestion.
Since I had raised that, because I put the question marks in the grid, it's one thing if we want to support what is already happening, but the specific recommendation for an action item that had come out of the February 22nd session was to develop a summer jobs program. So when I was asking for a little clarity on that one, if it would be work in collaboration with the existing summer jobs program from the school district, that would be something that's much more manageable than us trying to start a summer jobs program on our own. And I would tell you that we don't have the bandwidth to do that on our own.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. I would think that supporting whatever the school district is already doing, if they need, more hands or whatever, and maybe instead of develop, we could say support existing, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Diane, do you have a clarifying point?
Yes,
Jay, I'll get to you.
Actually, it's the park district who had the summer jobs
Oh,
program
okay, my bad.
in years past.
Go ahead, Jay.
So I was going to suggest kind of in terms of efficacy of use of this time, when we discussed using this as a discussion item was kind of trying to carve out some time within these meetings rather than continuing to tack on meetings and drag out this process longer. And I think that going through each of the sections to confirm, is this what we all can agree on? And I think using a straw poll is a perfectly good way of doing that. And then once we have a sense of, okay, area number 1, we feel good about this, move on to 2, and so on and so forth. The idea, and I think this was part of the suggestion, I can say for myself at least, of spending this time in this way, is that what we found when we've had our, additional strategic planning meetings is there hasn't been time to then take that step back and say, with all of these priorities now outlined, do we think realistically this is actually all going to happen in this period of time? So what I would suggest is that we try to tighten up each section and then take that, step back and say what is feasible with all of this, and then determine if we need to eliminate some additional areas from there. And so, Chris, that might be putting that on you as the chair, but that would be my suggestion.
Well, does everybody have the goals in front of them tonight? Okay. All right. Do you want to, let's, start with goal number 1, public safety and well-being. Should we try to do that?
Me as well.
Yeah, okay, I'm seeing some nods. Okay, so I guess where we would start is, do we want to take out Grace and Chandra's, our Jaya's suggestion of taking out the Urbana Park District Health and Wellness Center? Okay, I'm seeing the nod.
Chris,
go
do you
ahead.
want to start with the strategy number 1, just to look within each of those sections? I'm just suggesting, so we're not jumping around, if we literally start at the top.
Okay, all right, I can do that too.
If that works.
All right, so all right, so let's do thumbs up, and let's start with pursue methods to mitigate community violence, action steps, short-term. Fund community organizations that address the root causes of community gun violence. More specifically, fund programs that expose youth to career opportunities and partner with local governments, Parkland, etc. That's A. Do we have a thumbs up? Or do we want to talk about it? Okay. Darcy, do you want to help us here?
I was just gonna ask that following each straw poll item, if you could just vocalize the total of in favor and the total opposed, because I'm trying to keep a written record as well as look up, and if it's not vocal, it's hard. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try to do that for you. And I would ask council members to kind of keep your thumbs up till I get them counted. Grace, did you have something to say?
Yes. I had recommended changes for that first one, 1A.
Okay.
And I think even before that, I don't agree with 1 being called action steps short term and strategy 2 being action steps long term. I just don't see that differentiation. I don't see it. I don't agree with that one. And then 1A more specifically, I think if we're going to include any examples like local governments, Parkland, et cetera, I think it would be good to include others that we've talked to, like HV&T came to that meeting and talked to us with input. We've heard from First Followers, CU Try, Angels Youth Center. So I think that it would be more fair to either not include any examples or include more examples that we've heard of instead of just these two that I don't understand why just those two.
Sean, Jaya.
I was just going to suggest getting rid of them more specifically as well. I think it originally was fund community organizations that address the root causes of community gun violence, and I would suggest leaving it there.
Sharice, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think, and on some level, I kind of agree with what Grace said. Clutch the pearls. Regarding when you're talking about specifically, the other thing that I would like to say is that it says enhance city programs that address root causes of violence, and with that, again, more specifically, what we have in there is the self-made kings. And I think I need to definitely know more about that. I do think that we could leave out particular programs because of the fact that we have so many people that we've basically been hearing from or getting presentations from, and so on and so forth, that rather than honing in on any one group, that we actually have an opportunity to discuss with these groups what their programming is. We can say that we're going to do all this, but when we're really not knowledgeable about what the programming is, I think it makes it kind of off-putting to try to say we're going to do this with a particular group. That's all.
Okay. Carol?
Not advocating for one or another. I just want to clarify something about why there's the more specificallys in there. That was as a result at the February 22nd session, asking for these very broad categories to be narrowed. If you are trying to give direction to staff to take action about something in this broad area, then then we had gotten in these certain specific cases, we had gotten some more direction. And I say that in the context of you, council, giving direction to staff. I think this is where there's some confusion with, in each of those cases, if you look on the resources column, that's ARPA funding. And I think you're trying to maintain a broad category for ARPA purposes, which is perfectly fine. But if you are trying to task staff with taking action to implement these things, if you keep us in a very broad category, you might not be getting the results you're looking for because you're not narrowing this broad category down. So I just want to remind people how that evolved. And you're welcome to do what you want, and we'll take our direction as you give it.
Thanks, Carol. Jaya?
Okay. Mary Alice
is waiting.
Oh, was Mary? I'm sorry, Mary Alice. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I guess I was gonna basically state what Carol said, which is with these very broad categories, it's very difficult to figure out how to operationalize these items. That said, I can understand why people might be concerned that we're leaving groups out. So maybe one way of mitigating that would be having, instead of more specifically, it would be, for example, fund programs that expose youth to career opportunities. And some of those example organizations may be this, because it does lead us down a path in terms of where we want these goals to be targeted towards. If we just leave it really broad, it's going to be really hard for us to be able to make any kind of improvement, figure out, how far we've been able to go. So I think that what I'm hearing from Grace and from others is that it's not an exhaustive list, right? That there are other items that could potentially fall within this category. And so I think we just need to remove that assumption that this is an exhaustive list. These are just some examples of different ways that we could initiate this particular action step.
Chandra?
Okay.
And I thought that we had, on the February 22nd meeting, I thought we had talked about the Self-Made Kings program specifically because it was city run, and that we would support that specifically because it was city run, but that doesn't mean we weren't going to support other community organizations. And I think that's why that particular program is throughout the examples.
Jaya?
So kind of to piggyback off of somewhat has been said, I think trying to make it narrow, but perhaps not specific, right? So thinking about defining what do we mean by these categories, but like Mary Alice said, for example, because even within the city, there might be other programs that fit within addressing the root causes of violence that we feel like would be worth supporting. Self-Made Kings is the one that keeps coming up, but there also could be housing related programs, right? And so again, there may be overlap between some of these goals as well. And so I think that if we can say, okay, so we say, we want to support our community organizations, we want to support our city efforts, boom. Examples of what that might look like might be, supporting Self-Made Kings, adding additional rental assistance, whatever. Those are some examples. Those are very different examples. So I'm sorry, Carol, but just trying to create it where there is that space to define what that means as we operationalize that. I absolutely hear that. But I think that, especially when we're talking about the community organizations, we don't yet know, right? There, I assume would be a competitive process where organizations were applying. We don't want to sound like we are privileging or preferentially treating certain organizations. So I think if we're able to say, these are examples of organizations that might be eligible, but we don't want to be saying, these are the programs or the organizations we're already planning to fund. So I do think we should keep it narrow, but perhaps not specific.
I'm confused too. Is Self-Made Kings a city-run program? Diane? Yeah, you can get. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Do your thing.
You're fine. Go ahead, Diane.
Yes, it's run by Lamont Peppers. It's based in the Urbana School, specifically in Urbana High School. So if you're going to be talking about city programs and community organizations, I hope you also include in those categories anything that potentially things that the school district is doing or the park district is doing as community organizations, or community partners might be another phrase to use, because there's I actually am scheduled to meet with the superintendent this week, and we'll be discussing some of the potential areas for collaboration with the school district. So I'd like to leave that open to community partners, might be a better term to use, and that takes care of everybody.
Yeah, collaboration with community partners.
Well, which we do,
Yeah,
so
we do that.
Okay, anybody else? So, Carol, help me out here. So we need a thumbs up with regarding to kind of the changes that we've sort of made here to the specificallys, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, here I'm going to make this suggestion. Okay. If you're going to make a whole bunch of changes, I think and I don't know that you were going to get through everything tonight. If you make a bunch of changes, then I should revise it and then get your head nods at a subsequent. Because what I really think is happening is for at least for these first two items under 1A, 1B. I think what it really is that's a conversation that's going to happen under ARPA. Right. I mean, that's what's really going to happen. Staff is not moving out on any of that independent of the ARPA conversation. So I think that actually needs to be reframed. If anybody disagrees with me about that, but that's what I'm hearing. We're not going to come back and go, here's how we're moving out on this. We don't do that without ARPA money, and we won't be making any independent decisions about ARPA money. So I think that needs to be reframed. So if something has a heavy editing, I would just ask you to move on. I'll do the editing, bring it back the next time.
Okay.
And then you can edit even further.
Okay. I would just say this so that we all know and we're all on the same page, is that we're going to be voting or giving a straw poll on A and B, and we're going to kind of just disregard the specificallys for right now. Is that okay, people? Okay. Let's go down to C. Real quick while we're here. Identify and fund options that enhance current police investigative and operational capacity to address community violence and more serious and solve serious crimes. More specifically, develop a proposal to increase the capacity of the investigations division of the Urbana Police Department, staff and tech, to solve violent crime. Okay. Any thoughts on that? Great.
Are we voting on any changes to those? Because it sounds like we haven't changed any of the ABC yet, except maybe removing e.g. self-made kings from B, since it's at more specifically. Or
well, what I said is on the first two that we remove kind of the specificallys for right now, and maybe change it to collaborate with community partners is kind of where we're leaving it on A and B, Grace. So if you have any thoughts about this specifically on C, you can address that, or anything else about C.
Just confused on if we're doing a thumbs vote on any.
Well, what I'm trying to do is do a thumbs vote on A, B, and C. That's what I'm trying to do. Do you want to have a thumbs vote on A and B first?
I'm just confused on if we're voting on any changes or just as is.
Well, I think we've made changes, is what I'm telling you. Okay. That we've changed the specifics to collaborate with community partners. We're not directing staff to do anything specific at this time. And we're kind of keeping it a little more broad in general, but knowing that, as Jay has said, that we would be coming back to these kind of things later.
So is it okay if I summarize another way? Just
please.
Okay. So what I was hearing for A, I think what we would be doing a thumbs vote to would just be changing it to fund community partners that address the root causes of community gun violence. Correct? That's it.
Yeah, that's
right.
Correct.
So if we're in agreement, do we just want to do a thumbs vote right now?
For just A?
Mm-hmm.
No.
So then on that, the only change is changing organizations to partners.
That, and then getting rid of the more specifically.
So we're voting on getting rid of the more specifically, not saying just ignoring it tonight.
Got it.
I thought we were going to say, for example.
We could say, for example.
Mary Alice?
So I think I feel that we should change more specifically to, for example, and with the understanding that the ARPA conversations will help direct what are those other examples that we need to include in this kind of bucket, so to speak, because that's at least what I was hearing Carol saying, which is that the ARPA conversations are going to then drive some of these directions for what kinds of community partners we should be working with. Is that right, Carol? Is that what you were suggesting?
This is what I'm struggling with is I have the staff perspective, right? And what I want you to understand is once you vote on these, then it's sort of like I go, here, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And if these are things that you want to do through ARPA, then those are not, those could be your goals and stuff, but those are not things that you would necessarily be directing staff to do. So when I said I wanted to recast it, I wanted to make it clear that those were going to be decisions that would be made by you. And it sort of does already reflect that in terms of the responsibility. It does say mayor, council, and I guess I would want to just capture more of that. Because I'm not tasking anybody with that. Staff isn't being tasked with that. You're tasking yourselves with that. So the direction you're going in is fine. But I just want you to understand staff is not being tasked with those things. You are being tasked, you are tasking yourselves as priorities for ARPA when you get there to make these things. That's how you will realize those priorities.
So A and B, C is staffing.
Yes.
It's yes, tasking staff, but yes.
Yeah.
Grace?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree that a lot of this is going to be possibly some ARPA talks. I also have concerns about just kind of putting it off as like, well, that's an ARPA thing because it's one-time funding and it's not going to be available that soon. And so, I mean, if we're going to fund community partners for addressing root causes of community gun violence, I think that's going to be more than a one-time ARPA payment and is going to take, collaboration with staff for making those kinds of agreements and whatever it is. So I definitely hear you on that, but I also have concerns about just saying, well, that's ARPA and that's the council's decisions, as opposed to incorporating these things as kind of systemic parts of the way that we set up the budget and the staffing tasks and kind of things in the city in a systemic level, instead of just a one-time ARPA payment.
Diane?
Just a reminder, when we set out with these goals, it was for the next 2 years. So that means the funding source for these things is ARPA, and this is a 2-year timeline here. Unless that's changed.
And if I may, again, if you want staff to be advancing these things, you will have to narrow, you have to give us guidance. What specifically do you want to accomplish with the community partners? There's so many things, it's so broad. The things that we could propose, and rather than having us go through a series of back and forth where we propose something and so that's not what we're interested in exactly. We're not interested in that kind of a program. We want this kind of, just give us some direction so that we can narrow our efforts and give you what you're looking for, if in fact you want staff to be taking the lead on that. But but I see it as, through the ARPA funding, you're going to be asking for proposals to accomplish certain things. I mean, to just borrow a page from Champaign, they have some very specific objectives that they're seeking to accomplish through their blueprint. And so if you want to accomplish the same sorts of objectives, that gives us some direction. It's not just like, oh, anything is good. Because we don't want to have to go through a series of back and forth. Give us some specific direction if you want staff in the lead on this. But I see this as evolving out of the ARPA conversation, where you say, yeah, we want, do you want actual violence interrupters in the community or not? Because that's a very specific thing. And we don't actually have people who do the hardcore violence interruption in our community. We've learned that from conversations with Champaign. So that's a specific area, and there are many others. So I would see that as evolving out of your conversation about ARPA. But if you see it differently, then again, we're back to, I need more guidance for us, so that we don't spend a lot of time moving out on something and then bringing it to you. And then you say, that's not actually what we were looking for. That's not useful.
Chandra?
I think where we're lacking is sort of making these action steps like SMART, if you will, because it says fund community organizations. I know we can't get too specific as to which ones, but could we put, like, I don't know, a number on it? And maybe then the staff would be able to say, okay, these are the type of community partners that we have partnered with in the past, and these are the programs. At least that way, that's that's something. Does that make sense?
I don't know that we have, I mean, the mayor would be in a better position to answer, but I don't know that we have the kind of partnerships that in terms of past that have been targeted towards community violence in the way that you're looking for. So I'm not sure that past history is going to satisfy you. What we could do is we could bring, and maybe we need to take a closer look at what the Champaign blueprint. We won't be able to do everything they're doing, but maybe you want to look and see what things make the most sense for us. You know, the mayor and I had met with folks from Champaign 2 weeks ago, and there are definitely opportunities for us to leverage the foundational work that they've done. So if that could be something that we could do, we could take a closer look at that and see where there's some good opportunities there, if that would be of interest to you.
Grace?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely stuff from Champaign's plan that we can look at, kind of base things off of their research and hopefully collaborate with things as a whole community. As far as partners, I don't know. I feel like we haven't really come to if we're getting rid of them or including them. I'm feeling a little frustrated because I just don't know why local governments in Parkland made it on the list and acting like we haven't suggested others. Like I said, HV&T representative came to that meeting talking about possibilities to collaborate. We've had presentations from First Followers and CU Try about specific ways that they're working on addressing gun violence and how we could partner on that. So I think just my frustration is I feel like we have heard from these groups, and for some reason they're still not making it on this list when there's other local governments in Parkland are mentioned on there.
Diane?
I think to avoid this is just not make a list. You haven't decided on a list of anybody yet. Those were just examples, and I would say don't make a list, and that would leave it open to be
Chandra.
determined.
My bad, that was a mistake.
And I would add one more thing. We did meet with the city of Champaign. As I said, I am meeting with the school district this week. I have met with the park district. I have met with some community organizations as well, representatives from community organizations as well, and will continue to. So there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration as we move forward. And if your goal is to collaborate with community organizations that address root causes of community violence, then we can come back with that. Or during the ARPA process, you will be soliciting proposals, and those organizations can respond.
Jaya?
We don't have to have a list right now, if that's what's causing confusion.
I was just going to say, I think the city actually has a strong record of this. If you look at the youth services grants, you look at anything that's a competitive grant, right? You give a general, this is the area we're going to fund. Here are the priority areas. Submit your application and see if you fit, right? And so I think that's why, and honestly, I think that there could be, emergent needs that maybe are not ARPA funded, right? We don't know what the next 2 years are going to look like. I think ARPA is an incredible opportunity for us to make a real difference in terms of this area. But I think if we keep that kind of as, this is a budgeting and strategic planning, priority, right? Like that's why we're doing this. Again, we will continue to work through this. And it's something that should be kept kind of as a lens to everything that we are doing. So I would agree that just keeping it as, here is the basic, level, the different terms get used, the specific strategy, action step. I think that, I hear that critique of it's not a SMART goal, but I think at least for getting us farther in this process, I would suggest keeping it kind of that broader, it's broader, right? Like it's still not too broad, but narrowing it down to that piece, but not being too specific, so that we're not trapping ourselves into limiting what that means. So again, just to restate, I think listing it as fund community partners that address the root causes of community gun violence gets us to where we need to be, so that we can, it probably will be ARPA. There could be other things that come up that we're like, yep, we want to fund that. We're going to grant around that. there's going to be that competitive process for applications.
Grace.
Thank you. I agree. I was just wondering if we were moving towards some straw poll or thumbs up vote about at least 1A, as Jaya just said, changing organizations to partners and removing more specifically section altogether. Is that right? I think.
Sounds like we're nodding. Yeah, I think so. So do we want to do a thumb vote for A and B as the way we understand it right now?
I personally would suggest just doing one at a time. So we just spent all this time on A.
One at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. How's everybody feel about that? Okay. So, all right. Thumbs up on A. Hold them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Darcy, that's 6-0 on A.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now to B. Where are we at with B? No specific. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
I think Grace had her hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Grace.
I was going to say, now Grace is shaking her head at me, basically do the same thing, enhance city programs that address root causes of violence. Period.
Everybody okay with that? Looks like we are. Okay. Thumbs up on B then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. 6-0 on that one, Darcy. Okay, back down to C. And there is a specifically here, developing capacity of the investigations division. So any discussion on that? Mary Alice.
Yeah, I mean, this one is specifically directing staff to do something, and I think that this makes a lot of sense to keep them more specifically in this case, because we're asking them to do something, and that specific item is to develop a plan, to develop a proposal for us.
Any other thoughts? Okay, Grace.
Oh, sorry. I don't feel too strongly about it, but I mean, I think if we're getting rid of the more specifically, like we just got rid of develop a proposal to expand self-made kings. So, I mean, I think in the spirit, it would actually make more sense to get rid of that as well. I don't know that it's really much more specific than C itself. It just says develop a proposal instead of identify and fund. I think that might be somewhat implied. So like I said, I don't feel super strongly, but I think for the sake of consistency, it would make sense to get rid of that one as well.
Sharice?
I'm with Mary Alice on this to keep them more specifically, mainly because it is a request specifically from the law enforcement that kind of happen, and it's apart and different from what is proposed before this. So because when Rich Searles discussed like his wish list, that's what this kind of entails. So
Chandra?
Instead of writing more specifically, could you just put like the next indentation and an outline? And then that just clears that up.
it works.
Jaya?
I was just going to say, I like that idea. I think it provides that guidance that I think is helpful in this specific example where that was some feedback from staff that I think was really important, that it creates that space for exploration, but also provides some actual guidance on what we are asking folks to do.
Okay. So can we do a thumbs up on C then? With the
With the outline.
1, 2.
One.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Grace, what are you doing? Okay, so looks like 5-1 on that one, Darcy. Grace?
Thank you. I didn't know if you'd be willing to explore a thumb straw poll vote for, again, the action steps short-term on 1 and long-term under 2. Because again, it just doesn't make sense to me. 1 is all about root causes of violence. I'm not sure why that's short term. B is about the public safety review and a safety plan. That seems more short term to me. I feel like these were kind of thrown in there. They weren't on the original goals. So I would like to remove under 1 where it says action steps short term and under 2 where it says action steps long term. I didn't know if you'd be willing to call a thumb vote on that.
Anybody else? Diane, did you want to say something? Okay. Any thoughts on taking a vote on the long-term, short-term?
I frankly don't know if it matters. I mean, I think that we were trying to organize, when we were talking about a variety of things pre-goal session, we were talking about there's things that we needed to do immediately because we need to address what's going on in the community. But we recognize at the same time that there are things that are going to take some time to build up so that it does, improve public safety in our community. And so that's where I think this originated from, these short-term versus long-term. I mean, you could argue that funding community organizations could be both short-term and long-term, I suppose. I don't see a problem with having them there, but I don't feel strongly one way or the other.
Jaya?
So I don't know that they have, I mean, I think I agree that things could be both short-term and long-term. And I think that's actually the argument I'd make for just getting rid of them, because I think, the other areas we just have action steps, right? All of the other strategies, it just says action steps. And then in terms of time frame, and that's a whole nother conversation, right? Are we talking time frame or duration? But that's to me where that should be captured. Like, what is that amount of time that we're looking at? There's a whole separate category for that. So I would suggest removing the short and long term, because that should be addressed in the duration or time frame area.
Okay. Grace, are you so you're giving thumbs up to getting rid of long-term, short-term in the descriptions of the action steps?
Yes, I don't know if you'd be willing to call a thumb vote for everyone on removing.
I'll be happy to call it. That's fine. So the vote right now is getting rid of the description of long-term, short-term to the action steps on strategy number 1. And so let's see thumbs on that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm guessing 4-2 then. Yeah, okay. So Darcy, that looks like 4-2 on that one. And then I guess we still have to vote for C. Or did we already? I'm sorry.
I believe you did, and it was a 5-1 for
Okay,
adding
thank
the
you.
I for the outline format.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Darcy. Okay, so that moves us down to number 2, which is enhance and expand public safety resources. Should we deal with this issue right away, Grace? There is a long term on this action step.
I thought we kind of just voted on removing both of those.
Oh, yeah,
We're
you're
at number
right. Okay.
2.
Yeah, you're right. Number 2. Okay. Enhance and expand public safety resources. A, contract for and complete a public safety review. And then B, develop a comprehensive safety plan, including funding requirements based on the results and recommendations of the public safety review and available funding. Any comments? Can we go straight to vote then? Thumbs up on it? All right, thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary Alice, are you thumbs up? I can't tell. Oh yeah, okay. And Sharice, you're up, thumbs up. Okay, 6-0 on that one, Darcy. And then we go down to number 3, promote community well-being. A, support the Urbana Park District's Health and Wellness Center. Do we want to stop there and talk about that for a second? Grace?
Thanks. Yeah, I would again support removing that one, just because it seems like, although we have a vague idea of like fund community partners to address gun violence, and we'll go through the whole ARPA process and decide how we're doing that. So I think it would make sense to do the same thing with this Health and Wellness Center and have that be a part of the ARPA conversations and deciding process if that's what we're going to use to fund it.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, so I was going to suggest something similar. Instead of saying support Urbana Park District's Health and Wellness Center, saying partner with and support fund community partners that address health and wellness in the right. I mean, just kind of take that instead of having the very specific organization.
Grace, you okay with that?
I think that makes sense and is more in line with our other action items. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Darcy, what we're doing here is taking out the Urbana Park District from A.
Thank you, Chris.
B, so on B, promote communication and outreach to individual neighborhood groups.
Sorry, Chris, weren't we replacing it though with the fund community? Mary Alice said it nicely. It's kind of mirroring the first one, but focused on well-being. So we're not saying like we don't want to fund
wellness.
Could you repeat what Mary Alice said?
Yeah, what Mary Alice said.
I was just going to say, hopefully I can do this again. Fund and support community health and wellness initiatives, programs.
I think you said fund and support community partners that.
Yeah, that promote health and wellness. There we go. That promote health and wellness.
Okay.
And so is that collapsing A, B, and C into just what Mary Alice said?
No, it's just A. It's just swapping out what we did, what's existing in A with that other statement.
Okay. And we already voted on that. So that's already in. And so I'm going down to B now, promote communication.
Did we vote?
Just replacing the language.
Oh,
You need
okay.
to do a thumbs up to replace.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
language.
All right. I see what you're saying. We voted to change it. Now we need to vote on it. Is that what you're telling me? Okay. Do you want to vote on just A, or do you want to go down the list and get them all together at once?
Let's do A, B, and C.
Let's do them all.
Do them all? Okay. So promote communication and outreach to individual neighborhood groups and create a manual for victims of violence that summarizes available support services in the area. To all these 3 things, let's see those thumbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6-0, Darcy. Okay.
And to clarify, that was to approve A as amended and then B and C with no change.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, Darcy. Okay. So that takes us to strategy area number 2, housing. Number 1, how support housing security and equity. Action steps: complete home ARP action plan. B is determine amount of ARPA funds to set aside to align with the identified needs and gaps in home ARP action plan. C, coordinate with housing and social service agencies to reduce homelessness. D, enhance compliance with the housing provisions of the Human Rights Ordinance by educating landlords, increase awareness and understanding of the same with the executive community and tenants. Does anybody have any comments about any of that? Mary Alice.
I just wanted clarification on what it meant by executive community.
Yeah.
What does that mean in D?
You've gone
think
into
it's
the
just-
next column when you read
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Executive.
okay, thank you.
It was
Because I was
the
like,
community and tenants.
okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I did the
that-
same thing.
I read it wrong. I'm sorry, Mary. Okay, any other thoughts about it? All right, can we do some thumbs here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, looks like 6-0. Darcy, 6-0 on that one for number 1 under housing. Now to number 2, improve housing quality. The action steps are: A, pursue funds to rehabilitate dilapidated homes in targeted neighborhoods. B, provide targeted assistance for home rehabs and repairs for seniors, persons with disabilities, and low-income households. And C, prepare and review consolidated annual performance evaluation report. Anybody have any thoughts about all that? Can we take a thumbs up? Oh, Grace, go ahead.
Thanks. I was just having a thought as we've been talking about the bonds and stuff and about trying to incentivize affordable housing units or low income units to have more development in Urbana. And I just didn't know if that was something that is maybe already encompassed in here, or if not, that we would be interested in or able to, as I don't know what the city availability is, but of kind of recruiting or incentivizing more affordable income housing development.
Mary Alice.
I feel like we kind of already do that, but if we wanted to include something, it would belong in number 1, support housing security and equity, rather than housing quality.
Well, CDB, sorry.
Jay, I'm going to go with you first.
I was going to say, this is one I feel like staff are really intimately involved in crafting these specific ones. So I'd be a little bit hesitant to add more, because I think honestly that once we do take that step back, if anything, we're probably going to have to cut things down. So, I mean, I think that's an important thing. And I think that'll probably fall in line with some of these other ones, but I'm a little hesitant to add another one personally.
Diane?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. All right. Okay, so can we do a thumbs up vote on number 2 then? Or thumbs vote? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. 6-0, Darcy. Okay, it takes us to strategy area number 3. This is infrastructure. And strategy number 1 is improve quality of infrastructure current infrastructure assets. The action steps are: develop asset management plan of existing structure, lighting, traffic signals, sanitary systems, and bridges. B, develop plan for funding, level of service, and to replace, repair, build infrastructure based on assessment, and update city infrastructure codes, subdivision, and land development. Any comments? Can we get a vote? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Mary Alice, I can't see your thumb. 6. 6-0 on that one, Darcy. Number 2, increase investment in infrastructure equity. Action steps: A, solicit community input for use of EQL. That's the, remind me, Diane, what's that?
Equal.
Equal quality.
Equity and quality of life.
Thank you. Thank you. Funding, implement the EQL selected projects.
All right, doing that.
B, develop budget and strategy to take advantage of infrastructure grant funding for underserved areas. Prepare for grants for, quote, shovel-ready projects. D, incorporate an equity lens into priorities evaluation. Begin with streetlights, sanitary, and traffic. Any comments to that? Okay, Jay is saying let's vote, and I agree. Thumbs up, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 again. 6-0 on that one, Darcy. Number 3, expand green infrastructure within the community. Action steps. Explore possible locations and funding for EV infrastructure. And is that electric vehicles? EV?
Yeah.
It is. Okay. Evaluate options to enhance sustainability and climate resiliency on city-owned property and facilities. And C, explore green fee revenue, example, plastic bags and green revolving funds. Any commentary there, Grace?
Thank you. For this last part, just 3 under infrastructure, I think I would like it to have that for this number 3, ABC, are not intended to be done in sequence, just because it says they're intended to be done in sequence unless otherwise specified or indicated. I think that the other ones make sense because they're step by step. I think these 3 in particular are kind of somewhat independent things that don't build off of each other. And like, for example, the plastic bags and green revolving stuff, we already saw that presentation from that class because they happen to be available. So I just don't want it to be like, well, we haven't looked into EVs yet, so we can't take this opportunity here for number C or letter C. So I think especially for 3, I think I would like a note that says that those ones are not intended to be done in sequence.
So if I could just explain, when they're listed in priority order, it's for ones that have duration as opposed to time frame. I mean, Tim Cowan was involved in establishing those timeframes. So he said December of 2022 for all of those. So he's apparently prepared to track to checking the boxes on those by the end of the year without them, as you say, being dependent on each other. So when I said they're listed in priority order, unless otherwise indicated, a time frame is otherwise indicated. And those have a time frame associated with them.
Grace, how do you feel? Is that all right?
I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Okay. Darcy, did you track that okay? Do you understand what we're doing?
Addition of a note that items are not to be done in sequence for number 3 in area 3. Is that correct?
But we're not going to do, we're just going to keep it like it is because of the fact that they have a time frame.
Okay, so no change then.
It's true for everything else that has a time frame also. The time frame is the thing that takes it out of the duration piece. Everything else that has durations are in sequential order. In terms of, it doesn't mean nothing will happen, but in terms of prioritizing what happens, we prioritize the A's over the B's over the C's if there's durations associated with them.
Okay, you will still need a thumbs up for the approval of 3 with no
Okay,
change.
so number 3, we're doing thumbs up, yes or no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6-0 on that one, Darcy. Okay, that takes us to strategy area number 4, economic recovery and economic development. Strategy number 1, support current local businesses. Action steps: A, expand small business pandemic support to non-traditional Urbana businesses such as online, food truck, and mobile. B, survey local minority-owned businesses to determine what monetary, non-monetary assistance the city can provide and present recommendations that can be achieved with existing resources. And C, identify 1 or more sites downtown that the city will target for development with at least 100 units of market rate housing. And the qualifier here is downtown, both sides and everything in between Illinois, Race, University, and Vine. That's kind of what's limits on the downtown area. D, enhance the Champaign Diversity Advancement Program, CDAP, to include more Urbana minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses. E, merge together lists of Urbana businesses that currently exist, utilize that to work toward creating a business registry that is updated annually. And F, study the challenges facing childcare providers in Urbana. Anybody got comments there? Mary Alice.
So for B, survey local minority-owned businesses to determine what monetary, non-monetary assistance the city can provide. I'm wondering, there's got to be a goal there, right? So to increase their services to what is the goal for that? It just seems very open-ended to me. Increase the number of staff they hire. What are we trying to assist those businesses in accomplishing?
Sounded to me like it's within the context of the conversation when it happens. There's present recommendations that can be achieved. So I don't know.
I wasn't part of those conversations, so I just don't know. I don't have any background on that particular one.
Me either.
Grace?
Yeah, I think that there was some confusion on that one. I would definitely appreciate more details on any of these. I'm okay as is for that one because I think that the survey will determine what those needs are. I think being more specific would be helpful, but I think it would be okay without it. And then also C, I think last time we talked about why at least 100 units of market rate housing downtown, and if that number was really idealistic or helpful or kind of what it was based on. I don't know who all was in this group. James was the only one I know who was in this group besides staff. So I don't know if anyone else was in there and able to clarify.
It was just James and me and Elizabeth Hannon. So we picked 100 because we were trying to make it, like, okay, rather than just say get some, we were just trying to put numbers to things so that we could have a concrete goal to work towards. 100 is an arbitrary number, but it's a number that we thought was achievable, but also significant given that 200 South Vine was 42 units. And we thought, okay, let's do roughly twice that.
So it doesn't have to be 100. It could be.
There's
80.
no science.
But I do.
And now it's yours, so you can change it however you want. That was just to get something on the paper.
I do wonder though about the survey local minority-owned businesses. I feel the same way that Mary Alice feels, to determine what monetary and non-monetary assistance the city can provide and present recommendations to whom? To the businesses, or will it be to the city staff, or are we going to have a day in the park and some kind of seminar, or I just want to know.
It was to present recommendations to the funders, meaning you all, about things that can be done to help the businesses. And without dictating, does that mean keeping the business afloat, getting more customers, training their staff, putting more money in the owner's pocket? We weren't trying to be too specific. Just, if we said to somebody, what could the city do to enhance your business? Most people have answers for that.
Well, can we just cut down some of that and say survey local minority-owned businesses to better understand their current challenges? And then, some of their challenges might be, I don't know, getting loans or figuring out how to go online or, whatever. And then we can go from there once we know what their existing challenges are.
Or even basic financial literacy or something like that.
I've got survey local minority-owned businesses to better understand their current challenges.
I think that sounds fine with me on the survey one. And then for C, with the number of units, I mean, I think a number is helpful, but I think an informed number might be more helpful about if there is the space and the parking and the resources and all the things for that, or if it's just at least 100 sounded good. So I guess I'm okay either way, but I'm just not sure that at least 100 is really a number to be including in there, since we're putting it a hardcore number if we're not really set on one.
I don't know if you want me to defend it or just be quiet. I can do both, or no, I can do one or the other.
Well, let's get some council members to this. I mean, how do you guys feel about defining a number?
I was just thinking, I think 100 units is a bit much, actually, is what I was thinking. When you're talking about the downtown area, and when I think about the area surrounding downtown, I was thinking.
What about cutting it in half? Because there is that at least, so at least 50 units.
Yeah, maybe more like that, because I was thinking 100, that's quite a bit. But I could go for the 52.
Carol, do you want to defend it, or are you okay with that?
No, I mean, it's yours. I mean, it's yours.
Okay.
We put it forward, but just so you know, what was driving it is we feel, as a little group, we felt strongly that, you know, what's needed downtown is a lot more housing. And so what was reflective of our level of, what do I want to say, how strongly we felt about it was, hey, let's take a bite out of this. Let's do 100. Let's try to do 100. But 50 is fine too. 50 would be great.
Yeah.
Well, because I think, I guess what's in it, the visual in my head is does it have to be all one encompassing thing, or can it be duplexes put strategically in different places, you know, or something like that? So, but what came to my head was like big, you know, 100 unit something. And I don't think that you meant that now that you've explained it. I don't think that you meant that, but
Diane?
There are multiple sites, multiple parking lots, multiple areas that potentially could be developed. So yeah, they could be small scale to fit in, like the 200 Vine, 2 and 3 story, you know.
Okay.
Okay, so Darcy, it sounds like we're gonna just say at least 50 for now, with the understanding that it could be all kinds of things and all kinds, much more.
Yeah, well, we're thinking at least 50, but it could be more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
At least like the minimal is we're trying to, I guess.
Yeah. So a thumbs up on strategy number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 again, Darcy. 6-0 for strategy number 1 under economic recovery and development. Strategy 2.
Chris, whoa.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Diane.
I'm just seeing, actually, I think I'm seeing for the first time 1F, study the challenges facing childcare providers in Urbana. We don't have the capacity to do that. Is that?
Well, we just voted on it, but
okay.
Go ahead.
Whoever proposed this, can you I guess James isn't here.
My group was, we were firing on all cylinders. Let me just say this before we take it off. The last 2 items, E and F, if you run out, if it actually took us 6 months and then 9 months and then 4 months and then 6 months, that's 25 months. So we're not going to get to those. Realistically, we're not going to get to those. But there were things that were of concern. So
sure.
That we've heard.
Okay.
So.
All right. So you 6.
Well, and in particularly, I think with the COVID issue that's been going on, and people's lives have kind of been turned around, and that has been an issue, the child care thing.
I mean, if you want to fund somebody to study it, I mean, that's an option too, or approach it in different ways, but okay.
Sandra?
So maybe like F could come out of the survey, like if you survey childcare providers, who a lot of them are minority-owned businesses, or just in general survey childcare providers, at least you can identify what challenges they're facing. So it could just be a survey, and maybe there's capacity to do that.
So that would be incorporated into B then.
Mhm.
Actually, you're right.
That
Yeah. Okay,
just
that makes
my-
sense. Great.
Jaya?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about putting goals on here that we know we're not going to reach. I think that defeats the point of having them, but I think there are also those, creative ways of like, maybe we're funding someone to do that evaluation or that study, or maybe we will capture that information through other sources. So I think it is an important need, especially coming out of the pandemic, that we're hearing a lot about. So I think that childcare piece is worth keeping on there, but I think when we take that, take a step back, what is actually feasible and realistic, we need to keep that in mind, because yes, once you start adding up the time with the number of people we have, not everything is going to be doable. I think, as we're getting towards the end of this process tonight, I would suggest, if at least my recommendation would be that we see all the changes and then look at it with a fresh set of eyes and come back and be ready to be able to say what is actually doable in less than 2 years. So that's kind of a bigger point tied in there, but I think that it's worth keeping in there for now.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, and the one thing I was thinking about, Carol and Diane, you can let us know how much in the weeds has the staff been in here, because there's like community development's in here a lot. So I think that's the other piece that the staff needs to look at. If we say, okay, these are our goals, then they should say, well, realistically, we're not going to get to this one and this one, and then we can have that conversation.
And our top priority is to hire a director of community development. So we need to keep that goal in mind as well.
So that's a good question, Mary Alice. And we actually had done, just for our internal purposes, a breakdown by department. And the department I'm most worried about is executive, because everything that didn't have an obvious home went to executive. And executive is, I will say, overloaded with responsibilities. So I think going back at, as Jaya suggested, after it's all been recast, and being realistic about it would be useful. And I would just pay. And we asked all the department heads to give us feedback about, any concerns that they had about accomplishing their tasks. And so, speaking as the head of executive department, I have some concerns about that, but we'll do the best we can with the resources that we have. That's why you can't ignore, if the resources are yellow or red, you shouldn't ignore that. It doesn't make it go away just because you voted as a priority.
Okay, we have voted on strategy number 1. For right now, Darcy, it looks like we're just going to leave things as is under, A through F.
I had that there were changes to B and C, but no changes to A, D, E, and F. Is that?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. That takes us down to number 2, promote workforce development. Action steps are: A, explore the creation of an incentive program to encourage people to take retail, restaurant, hospitality jobs with partners such as Parkland or RPC. B, collaborate with District 116 and Parkland College to develop a robust and unique marketing program to enroll Urbana residents in the SWFT SWIFT program. And C, explore the creation of a dual credit program modeled on Peoria, such as fire, EMS, and law enforcement. Grace.
See, thank you. I have for this is I've been asking questions about C, about a dual credit program for a while now on email. And I'm still not sure what's currently available and what would be different in this one. I'm also not sure what kind of incentives we would have to encourage people to take retail, restaurant, and hospitality jobs. But so those are just questions. My main suggestion here would be to move A down, because it just seems kind of vague. So then that would bump up B, the SWIFT program recruitment, as the top priority, and then the dual credit program, and then explore this incentive program for retail jobs. So moving A down to the end of the list.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, I am curious what the conversation was about the incentive program. I don't know who was in that group, but what were some of the ideas? Was that your group again, Carol?
Yes. I didn't have any specifics. The reason Urbana Free Library is on there for responsibility is we were going to research it. I had read some headlines or something about somebody being creative about that without having any specifics. And so I thought, well, maybe somebody has done something. That's the idea of it, was explore it. You know, we have a problem, and if you have a shortage of something, sometimes if you incentivize it, then you can solve the shortage. So I thought, well, there's creative people in various places, maybe, and particularly ones where they have a lot of these kind of service jobs. And I thought, well, maybe they've done something that we could replicate. That's all that was behind that.
Well, considering this is more of a research project, I'll put it, I'm fine with leaving it there, especially since the responsibility is Carol, who she just said, and the Urbana Free Library. And it's certainly something that we're hearing a lot about in the national news. We see a lot of help wanted signs in the service industry, in our community. And so it's something definitely worth exploring if there are other avenues there that we might be able to assist the businesses with.
I'll get to you in a second, Chandra. Darcy, did you have a question?
I just wanted to confirm, I have 10 p.m. as the time. Is it time for us to motion to continue? No. Okay. I'm just checking.
10:30.
10:30. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chandra.
I was going to say, couldn't the research project, I mean, that's something that could be done simultaneously with everything else. Like it doesn't necessarily have to move in, order. But I think that it can be done simultaneously with as much vigor as B and C.
Grace?
Thanks. I mean, I agree. I'm down for that. I'm just, again, concerned where it says the action steps are listed in priority and intended to be done in sequence unless otherwise indicated. And for this first one, it's only 2 months. But I guess just my concern being that if it takes longer to explore this, then it's going to hold up SWIFT recruitment and looking into these other things. So, I mean, I think if we understand that things can go on simultaneously, I think that is okay, but it just doesn't seem like that's the way we're writing or intending these.
Can I just add something? The reason why you should care, and the reason why we did, I think we prioritized this one, is because we get a lot of tax dollars from food and beverage revenue, from hotel motel tax, and from sales tax. And so if we don't have businesses that are open for that are maximizing the number of hours that are open, or if businesses can't open because they can't find staff, that's kind of a big deal for us in terms of tax revenue. So for a relatively small investment of time, and we don't know what it's going to the result could be like, oh, like we're too small, we can't do whatever they're doing in New York or Chicago or some rich place like Telluride, Colorado. But but to figure out, is there something that we could do that would help us, basically get these wheels of tax generation back in motion, or more robustly in motion. That was why, we thought, let's see, let's do it. And, these things seem like small lifts, but every little thing that happens, like, the fire chief decides to retire, and, and we're doing different outreach about, XYZ. All these things take time. So the prioritization does make a difference. And all these things seem like small things, but when you put a whole bunch of small things together, then suddenly people's plates are full, and we're all busy doing everything else that the city expects us to do. So just saying. And with that, I will let you make your own decision.
Okay, are we ready for a thumbs up on number 2?
To clarify, it's with moving A to the bottom of the list, or was that scratched?
So we're voting as is written, no amendments to 2. Is that right?
No amendments, but Grace, did you want to try again or what?
No, I mean, I still would recommend my same recommendation, but it doesn't sound like it has the support. So my mind hasn't changed, but I don't think that this will change.
All right. Are you okay with us voting for the as is then? Okay. Thumbs up on as is, folks, on number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1. 5-1 on that one, Darcy. Takes us to number 3, recruit new businesses and industries. Action steps. A, recruit a new hotel to the Cunningham Avenue corridor near I-74 to leverage the demand generated by the Rantoul Sports Complex. B, create an incentive package to attract a new cannabis dispensary that has a minority owner and identify potential locations that are available for this use. C, ID downtown destinations for Hotel Royer guests. Develop plan to enhance the safety and aesthetics of pedestrian paths of travel to those destinations. And D, recruit a new grocery store and essential services to Northwest Urbana. Any comments there, Mary Alice?
It struck me, so D, recruit a new grocery store and essential services to Northwest Urbana. I wanted to know if people would be amenable to create an incentive package and recruit a new grocery store and essential services.
That sounds
We've
even
been
better.
trying to get people to go up there, and it hasn't been working.
Yeah, I think it's needed.
Yeah, that sounds even better to me. Create an incentive package.
Grace?
Thanks. Yes, I would support creating an incentive package or program and recruit new grocery store and essential service in Northwest Urbana, and even to move that item up in priority. I think A or B for that one. I think that needs to go before a new cannabis dispensary or Hotel Royer destinations. I think we've had that identified for quite a while. We've heard from Charisse and plenty of others, and also all of the socioeconomic statistics that we look at, all of the mapping data. It is a food desert, food apartheid area. I feel like there's not much question about that. So I think that we need to move that up. And it also kind of somewhat in line with trying to recruit a new hotel in North Cunningham Avenue and grocery store there. So I would suggest bumping up D to possibly A or B in the list.
I would agree with that.
So would I.
Okay, so Darcy, it looks like we're moving up D to looks like that would become B. And we're going to include not only recruit a new grocery store, but create an incentive and recruit a new grocery store.
Incentive package.
Incentive package, think better. Yeah. You got that, Darcy?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Shall we vote? Thumbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6-0 on that one, Darcy. Okay, it takes us to the last page, which, oh boy, is kind of a summary of our meeting from February 22nd. Council priorities marked for ARPA funding. And
can I just clarify that? Can I
please,
just clarify?
please.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So really that's just as of February 22nd. It's not from February 22nd. And what it is it takes everything that's in the chart that has been marked for ARPA funding and puts it in one place so that you know it's almost like a tracking sheet so that you know what you've already sort of said, oh, we're going to ARPA, that's ARPA, just so you know what you're thinking about when you get to that decision making.
Okay.
That's all that list is intended to be.
Okay. I'm not going to continue to annoy this council with my reading of stuff. So if you've all got it in front of you, do you have any comments? Great.
I don't know that this is one that I feel like we already went through the strategies and the action items. I think, as Carol said, this is just kind of a list for our reference of the ones. And so I don't know that we need to discuss it tonight, because I think the ones that have changed on here, like they would have automatically changed from the ones that we changed. So I don't know if we need to go through those in particular tonight.
Okay. Does everybody agree we don't really need to thumbs up on this and just the list is the list for now? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, amazingly, that concludes tonight's meeting. So with nothing else to do, we'll adjourn for now. Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Great job.
Great job, Chris.
Yeah.